This evening. This is a regular board meeting of August 8th, 2019 for Fort Bragg Unified School District. Is there any public participation on, see, I'm getting all, I need to read my "you will be on TV" statement. So individuals may address the board on agenda items in both closed session and regular session agenda during public participation and or at the time they are under consideration by completing a form that is behind Mr. Kale and giving it to Anna. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per individual and 20 minutes per topic, and speakers will be chosen in random order. Each person may only speak once per agenda topic and is required to address the board for the podium so that everyone can hear you. Public comment cannot be acted upon or discussed by the board unless placed on an agenda at a subsequent meeting in accordance with the Brown Act. The board may request staff to respond orally at the meeting or in writing at future time. The meeting will be videoed and broadcast on FBUSD YouTube channel. Okay, there's the formality. So here we go. Public participation on non-agenda items. Is there anyone here for non-agenda? We're not used to having the room so full, so thank you so much for coming.
I'm so excited. I hope we have like more than 3 viewers. This is great stuff.
So I do want to thank our Vice President Diana Paoli for this idea. She came up with this brainstorm, so I just want to thank her because it really was a nice evening to visit with you guys and have a few minutes to hear the excitement in your voices and what's happening for our school district. So thank you very much for that. Okay. So with no public participation on non-agenda items, we'll move to the approval of the agenda. Is there anything that we need to move or table or? Okay, we're good? Okay. So can I have a motion?
Make a motion we approve the agenda.
Okay, and a second?
I second.
Those in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Opposed? Okay. So we'll move on to item number 2, patriotic exercise with Trustee Makla.
Okay, well, many of you probably know this, but this August marks the anniversary, 99th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment. Josh Brown? Yes. Okay, that's our government teacher. So I have a short video, and if you don't know what the 19th Amendment is, it's when the women got the right to vote. So I have a short video, I hope. We'll all learn. Old-fashioned.
The right of women to vote had initially been an issue in Philadelphia at the drawing up of the original Constitution of the United States. At that time, the responsibility was shunted off to the 13 states to decide and was promptly forgotten. But ladies like Mrs. Carrie Chapman Catt refused to let the issue lie. From 1900 on, women's suffrage became an increasingly important crusade that gathered momentum as the years passed. Other countries of the world, beginning with New Zealand in 1891, had granted their women the constitutional right to vote. The American feminine contingent now fought tooth and nail for the same privilege. Their sisters in England joined them with the suffragette movement. Mrs. Emmeline Pankhurst carried the fight to the masses as head of the English movement. On more than one occasion, she was arrested for overzealous demonstrations on behalf of the universal women's suffrage. And surprisingly enough, men, some very important men like Teddy Roosevelt, came out strongly for the movement in America. Teddy was the pride and joy of the ladies in this battle. Beginning with Wyoming in 1890, 10 states had granted voting rights to their weaker sex citizens by 1917. In 1916, the first lady congressman, Jeanette Rankin from Montana, took her seat in Washington's House of Representatives. The tide of battle was turning in favor of the National American Women's Association. At the Presidential Nominating Convention of 1916, the suffragettes haunted the streets of Chicago, letting the delegates know in no uncertain terms their feelings on the inclusion of a pro-suffragette plank in the political platform. They stole the thunder from the usual colorful doings of the male delegates. Then, in 1919, came the climactic moment in the suffragette campaign. Congress approved the 19th Amendment, which provided for the voting rights of women. Speaker Gillette of the House signed the bill accompanied by many feminine handshakes. Vice President Marshall performed the same function for the Senate. Later, ratification of the amendment by 36 states made it a law of the land. The official date of this enactment came on August 26, 1920. And in the coming November, the ladies appeared at the polls on Election Day by the hundreds of thousands. They had won their right to vote. The advancement of womanhood in the United States was now complete.
Wow. Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome.
So we'll move to acknowledgements. The first, Becky will do both of them.
So we have a donation from the Parents Club for library books in the amount of $500. Sorry, yeah, don't we all wish, really? Wouldn't that be good? $500, so thank you, FBMS Parents Club, that's really wonderful. And then, next we have the introduction of staff. I have one acknowledgement, on donations.
Besides the one from the
Yes.
middle school? Okay.
Okay, so this is actually the best part of the meeting, and what I want to try and convey to our viewers, and again, I'm hoping we have more than 3. What I want to convey to everybody is we have had the fortunate blessing to hire so many new people this year. And what's really touching is that there are many people from our community, many people from other communities who are coming to make us better. We have a whole group of folks who are joining our teaching ranks, and I have to tell you, we just could not be more thrilled. So what we'd like to do is introduce you, and if you could, I'm trying to think the best way to do it. If you could stand up and kind of look at the camera and wave, that'd be great. And then your family can go home and pause it on that one particular moment, take a screenshot, and then post it on your refrigerator. Just little ideas out there. I'm sure you can find great things on Pinterest to do with that. So we're going to start with, I'm going to start with alternative ed because we usually save them for last. So Connie Belli is the principal of alternative ed. So there's Connie Belli, the principal.
Doing my best, just to say.
And sitting next to her is Eric Forrester. Eric Forrester is our new alternative ed teacher. There you go. Yay. Eric comes with a whole lot of experience. We're excited to have Eric join us. Let's move to Redwood. For Redwood, I want to start with Principal Lundy Erickson. Lundy is our new principal at Redwood. And so I want to make sure that I am getting all of her staff because I have, there's a lot, but it's pretty exciting. So let me just make sure I'm saying everybody's name right. Okay, so we're going to
Everybody at
start.
Redwood stand, and then you would know who's here.
I'm just going to say their names. If they're not here, we'll just give a little love. Catherine Bernsdorf, I know, is here. Catherine Bernsdorf is our new counselor for Redwood. She comes with a lot of experience. It's really exciting to have her. Rebecca Cumby is here. I saw her. Rebecca comes to us from Covelo. She's our new first grade teacher. It's exciting to have Rebecca here. I don't know if I saw Allison Hartley. Is Allie here? Allie's working hard. Allie comes to us from Humboldt County. We're excited to have Allie. I did see Tara Kamar. Is it Tara or Tara? Tara Kamar. Tara is our new second grade teacher. We're very excited to have her. Ksenia, I'm going to try this. Kruglianska?
Ms. K.
Okay, that's so much prettier. So Ksenia is joining us kindergarten. And then Kim Mallory is joining us. She is kindergarten. Go Timberwolves. She's a Fort Bragg High alumni. Eliza Myers-Lance is our new second grade teacher. Eliza's local. She graduated from Mendo High. She was also our kudos director for Redwood last year. So thank you, Eliza, for joining the ranks. Taylor Stonebarger is here. She used to Taylor is a Fort Bragg High graduate, and she was actually our school board rep for all 4 years of high school. So you're back in the room, Taylor. You see what you missed? Jessica Melcher, also a Fort Bragg High alum. Oh, so now we're starting in on Dana Gray. Mr. Kale is our returning principal for Dana Gray. Jessica Melcher, 3rd grade. We're excited to have Jessica with us. Elizabeth Nordley is here, and Elizabeth, right in the back, right over there. Elizabeth will be teaching 5th grade. She comes to us with a wealth of experience. And that Dana Gray has the smallest number of newcomers. So now we'll start with middle school. We have Laura Vieira, who's our principal, continuing on. And new to the administration at Fort Bragg Middle School is Mark Chimolino, who is our new assistant principal. Another Fort Bragg High grad. Okay, so from the middle school, we have another Fort Bragg High grad. Brady Baumgartner is our new 7th grade math teacher. Excited to have Brady. Mr. Dowling is returning to us. He will be joining the middle school for 6th grade math. I did not see Leslie Johnson, but she is joining us for middle school PE. She's fantastic. We're excited to have her. We have a new counselor at the middle school, Erica Malsum. I didn't see Erica, but she's also a Fort Bragg High grad, so we're excited for Erica as well. Juanita Mee joins us from out of the district. She's wonderful. She's our new special ed teacher. We're excited. John Schubert. Mr. Schubert comes from out of the area, but he's fully credentialed. We're excited for Mr. Schubert. He comes to us with a wealth of experience. Muriel Shattuck is joining us, a Mendo High grad. Thank you, Muriel. Muriel will be teaching 8th grade English. We have Kelly D. Smith, who is our new SH teacher at the middle school. Lots of experience. We have Greg Bricky. I don't think he was able to join us tonight. He's our new woodshop teacher. And then we have Ann Chandler. I don't know if Ms. Chandler was able to join us. She's our new art teacher. And then in science, we have another Fort Bragg High graduate, Mallory Melcher. Oh, I did switch schools. I was just moving. I was coming along. So I ventured into the high school realm. Mr. Triplett returns as our principal. Ms. Alexander returns as our assistant principal. Greg Bricky, woodshop. Go Greg. And Chandler, art. Go Ann. Now, Mallory Melcher, science. Mallory's a Fort Bragg High grad. We're excited to have Mallory. And those are, oh, and then from Dana Gray, I totally missed it. Today, this young man, what a gem. This young man was interviewed and hired today for Dana Gray Special Ed, Gabe Hernandez, Fort Bragg High grad. So we are incredibly excited. What is probably the most exciting part of this is to watch the youth of our community come through and give back to our community, and to see the fortunate blessing that we have in Fort Bragg to get so many experienced teachers. We received more teachers who are fully credentialed. Not that we don't love our pips. We received a lot of folks who came to us with just a wealth of experience. So we have such a great blend this year. It's going to be a wonderful year. We're incredibly excited with the experience, the energy, and all the enthusiasm that you're bringing. Please get a support group. It's one of the things about teaching is that it is one of the hardest jobs you will ever have, but I promise you, you change lives, and it is the most important job on the face of this planet, because everyone everywhere has had a teacher in some way, shape, or form. You are the number one most important person in someone's life, and you won't know that maybe for decades, but it is an important, true, beautiful job. So thank you for all taking the leap of faith. Thank you for sharing your lives with us. We are incredibly fortunate and so, so grateful to have you join our team. So welcome aboard. And just to finish out the report, we do have some teachers who are newly tenured, which is incredibly exciting for us because then we always hope they're going to be here till they retire. We have Punya Droz who's teaching kindergarten at Redwood, Jennifer Davis in special education at Redwood, Margaret Normoyle, 3rd grade at Dana Gray, Daniel Ramirez, 5th grade at Dana Gray, Heather Davis, special ed, special education at Fort Bragg High School, Tomas Sanchez, our high school counselor, Melissa Schlafer, special education, Fort Bragg High School, Amy Valla, our CTE culinary arts teacher, CTE is career technical education, and Shannon Van Wormer, our special education teacher at Fort Bragg High School. So thank you all again. And I'm going to just say that if you'd like to stay for the meeting, you are always welcome to do that because this is incredibly fun and informative stuff. If you are trying to sneak out, now would be a good time. Feel free to watch us on YouTube. And just for a plug, we had 6 viewers. It's pretty awesome. It double. Sometimes true.
Yeah, for sure. You'll see me.
Okay, so Nate and Marshall, how are we doing? Are we ready? Great, thank you, gentlemen. Okay, President Babcock.
Okay, so we'll move on to communication. And can Mark hear me out there? Because it's about him. Nope, he's out. Okay. I just want to acknowledge that we received this newsletter from the California State Athletic Directors Association, and I just want to acknowledge Mark Cimolino because he is in here as the CSADA 2018 McKenzie Rookie Athletic Directors. So it's given to them doing an outstanding job in their first 5 years in the assignment. And I just know that Mark's come and done reports for us, and I just think you can always understand and feel that he does what's best for kids. And so I'm just so glad that you were in this role, and I'm sure someday you'll go back to taking on that, maybe, both schools. But do you have a copy of this? No. Okay, so here's his picture, and I just want to thank him. So now I don't have to put a sticky on it and send it through the interdistrict mail. But thank you, Mark, for all you do and good luck in your new position.
Make sure you show that to your mom.
Okay, so did anybody else receive any, I don't think we got any group emails. Anything, Mary? Okay. All right, so now we'll move to public participation on agenda items. And again, you can speak during this time or when we get to the item on the agenda. Did you receive any papers, Anna, for any topics tonight? Okay. Then I won't pause for very long. So we'll move on to item number 6 for reports, and the first one is our board report. So these are short announcements and reports of our activities for the last month or so.
I get nothing.
Okay.
Not a lot of activities, just wanted to welcome everyone back to a new school year. We're all super excited and hope you all had a good summer.
I started my Keenan training. It's very exciting. Although I do have to say, they do change the videos, so it does make it a little bit more engaging. And I haven't had, I think the first that I viewed was some sort of harassment, but it was a different perspective, and I appreciated it. So it was nice to pause and think about interaction with your peers, your coworkers. I also spent a fair amount of time. We actually had a meeting in July, so I think we all were doing some work that they're not acknowledging with vision and mission, and so I've been really kind of trying to find out what other people are, how they have it structured. And I also, the city of Fort Bragg recently had their contract out for their employees, and I downloaded it, and I was going to give it to Becky or Wendy. I just find it interesting. They're a large employer in town and to see what their pay scale looks like. They had it, I think, in their last month meeting, and how they do their step and column. So it's interesting to know kind of how the community handles that, and I just wanted to pass it on to our staff that do the bargaining to know like what another big employer in town, how they handle it and what their pay scale is. And my schedule changed, so tomorrow I won't be able to hang out with the staff, because it's kind of fun to be able to see after, in an event, they're having a luncheon for the staff, and I hope everyone has a lovely time and enjoys the rest of this wonderful weather, because we never know when it's going to end, and have a great school year.
Mary, do you want to go?
Let's see, well, I attended the emergency preparedness meeting with the city and Becky and a big group of people. I thought it was very productive. I'm not able to go to the next one the day they scheduled, so I'm hoping one of you can do that. It's September 4th, I believe. Because I think it's important for one of us to be there. And then attended the registration day at Dana Gray, which was intense. I actually went to pick up my grandchildren, but they weren't there. But Mr. Kale, I asked, do you guys need some help? And he's like, you stand at the door here and tell people where to go. Okay, but it was actually really fun, and I think that it went pretty well, and I think people enjoyed getting to register online. That was a really great addition this year. So,
My husband must have missed you because he was confused.
well, I was only there for about 3.5, 4 hours. I wasn't there the whole time. So.
But he did make it to the high school, because I saw him.
He did, but he apparently was in a wrong line for quite a while before he realized he didn't have to wait in that line, but it's okay.
Well, the big room got really small with a lot of people, so.
And we'll talk about registration in a moment.
Yeah.
It was, he just doesn't know
was
what to
great.
expect. It was just, no offense, but he had to do something that I normally do, and it didn't go very well. But I was with our son in Santa Rosa. So I did the workshop as a board, and then I also did the CSBA summer learning training online, and I have to tell you, it was great, but also very sad at the same time to realize what we can't offer our students by not providing summer school. So I'm not sure how beneficial it was, because I just felt bad after. But there's another one that I'm hoping to finish in the near future. And then I also spent a week at the fair with Megan Tunzi and her FFA group, and those students were representing Fort Bragg High School, and it was a great experience for my son and the other students, and I just want to give a shout out to her and what she does for them. And that's it for me. Okay, so moving on to superintendent report. So the first one is professional development report.
So we added that to your folder, and what I have listed there are the professional development opportunities for me in particular, because I believe that's what this report is on.
Mm-hmm.
So Lundy and I attended the Breakthrough Coach Training in July. We did the leadership blueprint for all the administrative team in Ukiah. That was hugely valuable. What we're looking at next year is to do the one-day follow-up to this training. So Deb Cuban and I are looking to schedule dates sometime next week. I'm scheduled to attend the MIG training, Masters in Governance, with Trustee Schneider and Trustee Makala. And then from there, the next 3 conferences are the AXA leadership conferences that I try and participate in each year. The AXA leadership conference in November, we are looking to take the entire principal administrative team, so we're working on making sure that we have coverage for those days. The superintendent symposium is in Palm Springs this year, which I'm not really thrilled about. I don't like traveling that far. There's so much information that comes out of that, though. It's hugely important that we attend. And then there's the North State Conference that happens sometime in April, and usually that's in the Sacramento area. I think last year it was in Truckee or Reno. So that's what I'm hoping to attend. My professional development usually comes out of Title II or Title VI funds. Questions on that?
Thank you.
Okay. Staff evaluations. So on that, it's Redwood evaluations were completed. I just wasn't able to work with Susie and get through the whole pile to figure out how many and who, but I know they were done. So the staff evaluations, there were a few that weren't done. Either on my part, the administrator was retiring or not completing out the year, so I didn't want to go through the evaluation process. So that's why we had 12 scheduled and there was only 10 on for me. And then you can see the other numbers there. We had a few that were missed here and there, and we have them back on the rotation.
So then they'll be done this year?
Mhm.
Okay.
And I just handed those out to the principals so they know who they're evaluating for the 1920 school year, and I believe the notifications are already going out. So we are in good shape there. And moving on.
Any questions for Becky?
So the Redwoods, the one that, there were none done, but that'll happen this
No,
next year.
they were done.
They were
I
done.
just don't know how many
Gotcha.
because I wasn't able
Got
to
it.
go through.
That's what I wanted to clarify,
Go through the
yeah.
list. No,
Okay.
I know she did her evaluations.
Gotcha.
And is there a system as to who gets evaluated?
Yes. So when you are hired, you are evaluated your first 3 years. When you're probationary 1, probationary 2, and then your first year as a permanent teacher. If you are a PIP or a STIP, meaning you're an intern, you are evaluated every year, every probationary year, and the first year of your permanent status. So a PIP or a STIP could be evaluated in truth like 4 or 5 years, depending how long it takes them to get their credential, and then that first year of permanent status. After your first year of permanent status, you are evaluated every other year.
Okay.
And then in our contract, we have that you can do a self-evaluation 2 times in a 5-year term. So every 5 years, a person, a teacher, a permanent teacher, could do a self-evaluation in cooperation with his or her principal, and they jointly make that decision. There are times when the administration will say, I don't want the self-evaluation to be an option. Let's do a classroom evaluation. And we talked about this at our administrative retreat, trying to come up with ways to make that more meaningful and more of a professional growth opportunity for the teacher. We have fabulous permanent teachers, and a principal coming into a room making check boxes of what they do and don't do aren't necessarily professional growth opportunities. So we're going to throw out a couple of things. We're going to talk to FBDTA and try and have a menu of ideas for our teachers who are permanent so that it becomes more of a professional growth opportunity. But the short answer is every other year.
Okay. So I was going to ask if you're happy with the system, but it sounds like you guys are researching other ways to.
The evaluation system, we are always trying to improve because the point of the evaluation system is not for an I gotcha. The point of the evaluation system is to provide a substantial plan for growth and improvement. That's what it's about. I don't want people to think that because I'm using the word improvement that they're automatically bad. We can all use a consistent level of improvement. So we are trying to find a way to provide that feedback so that it doesn't feel punitive, that it is a mutually and jointly agreed upon mechanism, and that we do have measures and ways for our teachers to improve. That's really what it's about. So am I happy with the system? We're okay with it. We're doing it. We're going to make it work. I think sometimes it's not enough.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions or any further questions? Okay. All right, suspension.
Suspension. So this is the annual report where you get to see what happened and what we did. And what's interesting about this report is there are increases. And when you look at this, you can see in what areas the increases happen. What I found interesting was that I knew that in the high school we had some cases with vaping, and I couldn't figure out where they ended up because they're not under tobacco. So that's a question that I need to have with the high school administration. So you can see that we've had some little bumps in the road. the hard part with this is when we do have the discussion with our administrators about, let's talk about our data, let's talk about our numbers, let's see where we are, why did this happen? Every single principal can tell me the instances and the particulars of why we had a spike here and why we had a spike there. There were lots of new students who were, and I shouldn't say lots, there were a few new students who had never been suspended before, and they were kind of anomalies. So there's nothing off the charts shocking here.
So what's
the
the
vaping may be
19
part
plus
of it.
mean? I'm sorry.
I think that's maybe where they
They
placed
went.
them. Because that went up at the high school, and I think that's where they put it.
Yeah.
So,
And it's also interesting, threats went up, but bullying went down. So is that kind of maybe that they actually could have been in the other column?
so a bullying offense is pretty particular. It has to be ongoing and consistent.
I just did that learn. That was it, was bullying with your coworkers.
So if someone is bugging you, you can't use the word bullying. Just one time is not an issue of bullying. So unless it's consistent and ongoing, it's not bullying. We do have threats, that's different. So,
That's increased quite a bit. But happy to see no bullying. That's amazing.
well, and how do I say this? I am hoping that our students become much more comfortable and feel safe with talking to someone, because that's what it comes down to. We can only do what we know about. We can only respond and help and be preventative with what we have information, on which we have information. So that's always the difficulty for us as an administrative team. We have parents who come in who are quite angry because things are happening with their kids, but we can't do anything if we don't know. The good news is we have more surveillance cameras in our schools. We're able to catch a little bit more, and we have more supervision out in the hallways, so we're always trying to be more preventative. The hard part is we don't know what we don't know. So if there are things going on, the best way to stop it is to tell someone so that we can approach it.
It's a little, the middle school's a little concerning.
The middle school had a couple of issues last year, and we had some kids get moved around a little bit, but we recognize that there were some issues, and if I had to go through and be very specific about some of the suspensions, some of them were kind of one-time things.
But the lighthouse looks like has improved quite a bit.
Yes.
It's great.
That's due to restorative practices, I'm guessing.
Do you have any concerns, long-term, short-term, looking at this?
No,
or-
not right now.
Okay.
I will tell you, as a high school principal, if you looked at my data, my discipline data, it was ebbs and flows. I mean, one year, we had an incident, which I'm not going to discuss, but we had an incident and 10 kids went home in one day. Well,
Yeah.
I couldn't have planned that or tried to prevent that if my life depended on it. It was something that was, and it's just what it is. We are a public, comprehensive high school. We have 500 kids on campus, and the sheer fact that the numbers are as low as they are is really a testament to the good work the administration and the teachers are doing. I mean, they're keeping it together. So our teachers do a great job, and our admin is right behind them supporting them, so.
Okay, any other questions for Becky? Okay. All right, independent study.
So on independent study, I have the numbers for you. We had 6 students in the high school on independent study. The independent study program is most important at the high school for the credit recovery component. That's the part that we have been leaning on with independent study. So we had a total of 33 students in credit recovery at one time or another last year, which is a huge amount. It allows us to help them recover credits without having to be transferred to our alternative education site for just 1 or 2 classes. And it gives our teachers the flexibility to be able to have students complete a second semester class without having to go through the whole first semester again. We can be much more strategic on how we help students fill in those gaps for credit recovery. So what I was most pleased with is the number of students going through credit recovery, and our independent studies students go through credit recovery, and those were the numbers that we ended with at the year. If we were to go back and audit all the students who went through credit recovery last year, it would be double that, because they took their class and they left. Does that make sense? So I'd have to do a little bit more digging if you would like to know that total number. I know from Acellus that we have 150 licenses for Acellus at the high school, and I believe we were using like 125. Does that sound right? About 125 at the high school. So we know that we're getting kids through courses. So, and our graduation rate is at Fort Bragg High School is doing well. It's still in the 90s. And I really attribute a lot of that to the credit recovery opportunity. Questions on that? Okay.
And do you think we're doing, and this is more short-term, but do you think getting, as we've been talking about attendance and things, has the use of the short-term contracts gone up? Have we seen maybe more recovery
We can
of
look at
funds
that
way?
next. We can look at that next month. Short term has always been pretty consistent at the high school because of the attendance policy. So students know that if they don't use that short term contract, then they're taking all of those as attendance hits. So we haven't been worried about short term at the high school.
I was thinking
been-
district-wide. more.
District-wide, K-5, it's not used nearly enough. And part of that is because we require 5 days, a 5-day minimum for short term, and then we require a 5-day lead time. So we'll
Just
have
hard.
we'll have lots of people say, "Oh, I should have done that," and then they just call the teacher and get the work and move on. And the hard part is because we are an ADA district, we want those short-term contracts. It means that we capture that full attendance.
So anyone planning vacations?
Plan them on the 14 weeks that we're off. And if not, let's do a short-term independent study contract, please.
So much work for everyone.
It is a work. I've done it for my
teacher,
kids
yeah.
several times. It's work for everybody, but it is money
That's
back to the
good.
district. and
Right.
It's
And I-
nothing, takes the seat time, or takes the place of a seat time, but,
But it helps.
It
But
does.
it helps,
helps.
yeah, it's better than missing it all, doing nothing.
okay. Any questions on independent study? Okay. Online registration.
So we had our first 100 online registration palooza on August 6th. And first off, I just want to commend Anna Russell and Sarah Bushnell. They had been planning for months with this. And we had kept saying, okay, we're going to do this, and we're just going to rip the Band-Aid off, and we're going to see where we land. Well, the reality is that when you rip off a Band-Aid, you can't fix anything until the Band-Aid's ripped off. And it's probably not a very good analogy. But, so just so that everyone, I just want to publicly say that as a district, we started telling people, I believe in February, we had board members in this room for close to 8 hours, open, willing to help people get their Aries accounts set up. We had a bank of computers at all the open houses, helping people get their Aries accounts set up. We sent home notes. I was sitting in a restaurant and someone said, "Oh, look, you just sent me a notification, Becky." I'm waving because we sent out multiple notifications about the online registration. And our families, I just have to take my hat off to our families. They were incredibly patient. Just like we predicted, guess what happened at 11:30? The entire town of Fort Bragg descended on Dana Gray multipurpose room. And I told folks, next time, come at 1, come at 2. And I literally took a picture at 1:05 that I have on my phone that I'm going to figure out how to post. There were no lines at 1:05. There were no lines. We had people setting up accounts consistently throughout the day, but literally there were two people in line at most. So it was incredible. An hour and a half after the fact, everyone had received the registration and moved on. We are holding a debriefing meeting on Friday to talk with staff to figure out how we can improve things. We already have a whole list of things that we can improve. We've had several people email us and say, "Thank you for doing this. I have 4 kids at 4 different sites. I didn't have to take 4 days off from work. And one father who came in, he was incredibly frustrated. I said, "Sir, it's 11:44. At 11:54, you're going to be at the front." Well, at 11:56, he was at the front. And I said, "Okay." I was off by 2 minutes. But he was like wrapped around a table and the line almost went out the door. And I said, "I'm telling you, it's going to be quick." So literally for him, he was the very last person in the line at 11:44. At 11:56, he was signing his papers, getting his ticket, and moving on to the high school. So we were able to get people through quickly. The people who registered online and had all their ducks in a row literally just walked in, signed, and left. So it was quick. People who had 3 and 4 children at 3 and 4 different schools did not have to go to 3 and 4 different schools. So those were that was the help. The good news is everyone now has an Aries account. It's very exciting. So I'm hoping that all of the mamas and daddies out there who signed up to get an Aries account will now use it and explore attendance and explore their child's grade book and explore email with the teacher. So we've done what we needed to do. As always, we have disgruntled parents out there, and we've had disgruntled people who thought that Facebook was a good way to communicate with us. I would say it's not, but that's someone else's opinion, mine. So I would just like to remind our community that when you're happy with something, let us know so that we can continue it. When you're not, let us know as well. But also just to remind people that we have grown up now in a new era of social media, and it really concerns me how many of our adults are treating each other on social media, because I want our adults to be the role models for our children. So I'm saying that publicly because it really does concern me. I'll stop there. Registration had many wonderful components. Registration had some pitfalls that we need to address. Registration, for the most part, with the amount of planning that we had done for how we envisioned it, registration did exactly what we wanted registration to do. We got everybody out of the woodwork. They have Aries accounts. We saved a ton of hours for our secretaries who had to, in the past, put all that information in manually. There are people who are still asking why we have to come and do this when our information hasn't changed. I'm just going to say it very publicly. It's the law. We don't have a choice. We get a legal notification every year that says you have to give this to parents, and you have to have documentation that they've received it, and you have to have documentation showing that they are sending their kid to school with all this legal ease checked off. So that's why we do it. We don't get together and say, what can we do to make people's lives miserable? We don't have that much time. It's really about filling in the legal checkbox. And so that's why we do it. So every year, while you live in California and attend California public schools, there will be some type of registration event. I would say embrace it, bring snacks, bring a friend, take pictures. Next year, maybe we'll have a photo booth, Anna, to make it fun. So it wasn't that bad. That's the long and short of it.
And I was there at 2:30, and it was so easy. But I am already on Aries, so that was a huge hurdle, I think, to kind of be a little bit more savvy on the computer. But there were no lines at 2:30, and that was my question: was how was it for the staff? It was super simple as a parent, but they were there for how many hours? Did you have relief? Was there rotation? Were you eating? And I was thinking, oh my gosh, I just worried about all of that.
Some people had rotation, as a lot of us did not.
Because I felt guilty leaving. I thought,
but
if someone should have called me, I could have definitely done an
You
hour
didn't,
post.
you didn't want to do what I did.
Well, no, not maybe where you were sitting. I would have, you would have had to been on campus, but I just didn't know how that worked for having it such a long day, because usually it's over 2 days.
It was fine. I mean, it's one day, it's done. And I have to tell you, every single family I helped, they didn't know who I was. They were so kind and so generous with their time, and they were so grateful for the help. And it was nice to meet so many people, and truly, just really kind, generous people in our community. It was a great way to be reminded on how truly, truly, truly blessed we are to live in this small little town. Just such nice people. Mr. Kale was there the entire time with his list, helping people, and some people were not so happy, but once they were done, we were able to. They became happy because they were done. So We made it through.
In the end, you think it was a time saver for staff?
Oh, absolutely.
So that's, people need
Hundreds
to,
of
people
hours.
need to know that.
Hundreds of hours.
So that their start of their year is more organized and in order.
Well,
Just to give
normally-
you an idea, there are 400 plus kids at every school. Now think about taking 400 plus pieces of paper and going through each child's file and updating it one by one. That's what we've been doing for years. That is a ridiculous amount of time.
Wouldn't you say it's usually the end of September or early October?
We
before
don't
it
even
was in
see
there?
the secretaries, and
Yeah.
it usually doesn't get done till mid-October. Well, that's unacceptable.
Too late.
Yeah.
Well, and the stress putting that Seabeds Day on them.
It's
I mean,
just too
working in the
much. And
counseling office
so
and watching that.
Yeah.
everybody gets to just, and we're gonna do this from now on, so it's okay. We'll help people through it. And just a plug for Sarah and Anna, they were helping people all through the summer, coming in and setting up their Aries accounts and doing their registration with folks. So if you're scared of the computer, make an early appointment, we'll help you do it. But yeah, it was hard when you're sitting there and there's 50, 60 people all needing an Aries account. And then Google, God bless Google, decided that they weren't going to send out the notifications. So there was like this traffic jam if you had a Gmail account. You didn't get the email verification that you needed to set your account up. So that was a little cumbersome. And even Mr. Kale, who's our Google mighty man, couldn't make it happen.
There was some moments of slow, but it worked out.
It worked out. And seriously, we're going to be so much better next year.
Well,
It
and,
was
yeah.
pretty impressive.
We were good. We were really good this year, all things considered. And so next year we'll photo booth.
I just have to make sure that I don't send my
mean,
husband.
Right. I
Right.
just
Well,
wanted
and
to
I
take
think
him, oh.
It's just personality. He really, I think it was simple. I mean, I had done everything ahead of time, but he being anxious about being in that situation, I think just made it. And then he got on the wrong line, and then, Lord help my husband. But anyway, he made it.
Good job, Steve Walter.
I wanted
My
to take
wife
a minute
came home and
to,
said that was the smoothest, easiest registration ever. It was just boom,
It
boom,
was quick.
done. So, like I say,
To jump
give the
in.
people another year or two to get the learning curve down, and it's just gonna get better.
I'm going to jump in. I wanted to just commend the staff. You
Yep.
guys were amazing and held it together, and you didn't lose it on anybody, including me, so thank you. But you were great. I mean, at times it was chaotic just because of the sheer numbers of people, and most everybody I talked to was like, thank you so much for doing this. I just got to come in and do it. I got to leave, so we'll get through the glitches next year.
So how are the numbers? We talked about kindergarten numbers off and on the last few months. Do we know? looking good? Is it-
Kindergarten's a little tricky right now. Ms. Erickson and I are trying to determine if we are going to make a TKK combo. We have 23 TKs enrolled. Our class limit is 24. So here's the pickle. If we get 4 or 5 more kids before the first day of school, then we need to make a TKK combo. If we do that right now, then we have to take an existing teacher and remove some kinders from her class. Hell hath no fury like a kindergarten mom scorn. When you have been given your teacher's name and you think you have this teacher, yes? And then the principal calls you and says, well, we've had to move classes around. So Ms. Erickson and I are really looking at that and trying to figure out if we can hold off on doing it. And it's a double-edged sword. If we do it now, we give everybody the weekend to be mad and to be upset, but we prepare them. If we wait and roll the dice and we just have 24 TK kids, then we don't have to move anybody. But I will tell you, 24 4-year-olds in one room, that's a whole level of love. These are the things that we're grappling with. And then the other wild card there is, will we get more kinders? If we get more kinders, we need the space that we currently have in the kindergarten classes. So we're trying to juggle that right now. We do this every year. Every year, I keep calling the front office at Redwood, what are our numbers, what are our numbers? I know when they see my name pop on the phone, they just wait and let it go to voicemail until they get the numbers together. We are in a pickle right now. We have to make that determination. I think what we're going to do right now is wait for Monday and see where we're at. We are going to try not to make a TKK combo class on the first day of school. If we're going to do it, I think we're going to do it Monday, at the very latest Tuesday, but
How many kindergarten classes right now?
6.
6? And they're all at,
They're at 20, 21, some are at 22.
Mhm.
So there's room to do it. And we don't absorb a whole kindergarten. We would, right now it looks like maybe 10 kids would get moved, but that's just 10 unhappy families. It's just never good. So
But did we reach our goal for the number of kindergartners we were hoping for, or?
actually, the number that we thought is much lower.
Oh.
So I'm hoping that this is where we're at, because if the number that I thought it was going to be shows up on Wednesday, then we're going to have to hire a whole nother teacher. So I think,
yeah.
I don't know. We have done a really good job about advertising registration. We've done a really good job of getting out in the paper and on Facebook and in all the places that we can do. We had kindergarten registration, the prelim in March, then we had it in April, then we were taking kids in May. And so it's not like we haven't beat this drum. We're just waiting and making sure this is it. So there are no guarantees. The old saying in elementary school world is you don't make any promises until you see the whites of their eyes, and we're not going to see whites of anybody's eyes until Wednesday. And then we hold our breath and hope that that's the number, because on Monday, then we get 1 or 2 people who come in and say, oh, I thought school started on Monday. And then you just go, glad to have you. Welcome aboard. So that was a long answer.
But a
Sorry.
good one, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. All right, we're on 6.3 for the Three Rivers Annual Report with Roger. Roger, will you introduce yourself for the public?
Sure. My name is Roger Coy. I'm the school director for Three Rivers Charter School. Okay, well, it's good to see all of you again. And I wanted to start out, first of all, by saying that REACH is the motto of our school. And the values that you saw listed up there, it stands for respect, empathy, achievement, citizenship, and hard work. And it's part of the value system that we actually teach the children. It's a big part of our positive behavior program that we have in place. Do I need the clicker?
Yeah.
Just a summary of our enrollment coming up for this next year. Right now, we have 96 children enrolled. We'd like that number to be at 100. So we have a few more vacancies, and we'd like to get those in over the next week here. Students that have transferred from our school to Fort Bragg for this next year is 23. The number of students that have come to Three Rivers from Fort Bragg is 17. So that was good. Our SED numbers were at 72%. We normally run somewhere between 63, 64, and 70%. And as you can see in the enrollment groups, our Hispanic Latino population has increased quite a bit. We're up to 31%. If you remember, per our MOU with Fort Bragg, that's pretty much the objective, is to be within 10 percentage points of Fort Bragg. And we've got another year to improve even better The last 3 years have been, it was 16% when we first started our process. We got it up to 21% last year, and this year it looks like we're running right around 31%. So our efforts are paying off, and that's working out. Numbers are hard to see. I wanted to give you an overview of our 5-year budget plan. Basically, the bottom line is, as far as reserves go, we're doing well. We're at $1,065,000 last year in reserves. This year, we're planning on being at $1,039,000. It drops a little bit. We run a little bit at a deficit, primarily because of the lunch program that we're having to put in this year. We're going to take a hit on that, as well as we've got some new facilities costs that normally are not in our budget because of the new facilities that we're pursuing at this time. And I'll talk about that in just a little bit. Even though you can't see the numbers very well, are there any questions on the budget? Okay. I want to go over the our academic results from the Smarter Balance to give you an idea of how we're doing on that. We did implement the new ELA curriculum last year, and we had plans to put the new math program in this upcoming year, which would be the Bridges program. To look at the results, as far as the met or exceeded, I took it back to 2015, 2016, so you could get an idea of the growth. It went from 34% of the school met or exceeded standards, 2016-17 up to 36%, 2017-18 up to 44%, and 2018-19 it went up to 50%. And our objective per our MOU with Fort Bragg is to improve that at 3% mark per year. So that's on track. I also wanted to show the standards not met, because they could run not quite parallel, but you can see the standards not met numbers are driving down. I think the title on that got reversed. Yeah, looking at it. The standards not met and the met or exceeded should be reversed. It's right on my presentation, but it's wrong there. I don't know. It got downloaded. No, I guess it's right. That's right. It's just the columns are backwards. Sorry. Okay, it's all good. Never mind what I'm talking about.
But they didn't add up to 100, so were you leaving something out?
Yeah.
The standard, okay.
Near. I left near out. Because
Go back to it just one more time for me. Could you go back to that one more time?
Sure. Yeah, I'm showing standards met or exceeded and standards not met.
So met or exceeded are two categories because there's standards met. So there's 4 categories in this, just so that people know.
There's met or exceeded, that's 2 categories. And then standards not met is the 3rd category. The 4th category is the one in between that with the standards, near standards being met. Standards nearly met is what it's called. Right?
Yes. So I just wanted to make it clear that there are 4
there are 4 categories
for that. So that
right.
And Roger, the only reason I'm doing it is because when I have to follow you and present this, someone's going to say, well, I thought we saw it before. So
right.
There's 4.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Okay, this is the graph showing those 2 sets of numbers. The blue line, the top line, is the standards met or exceeded. It's got a nice trend to it. It's improving nicely. The red line is the standards not met, and that's coming down. Of course, we'd like to come down to 0 with that number.
So maybe next year, Roger, when we go through your test scores or when your dashboard comes up and you give us another report, it's really interesting to look at the standards nearly met, because that's your group that flutters in between. And so when you look at those four together, what happens is when your meet and exceeded goes up, you can typically see if your standards met kids stayed the same and where that bubble moved.
Sure.
So
Right, because we're going to see that in the next slide, exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
That there's a group that moved out of the standards not met, but it doesn't show where they went, and they went into the nearly met.
into the nearly. So
Yeah.
when you do a test score presentation, it's always nice to see all four so that we can see how that bubble moves, because the exceeded usually is your top group. And so you can see the kids who met, if they've moved into there as well. So just a note to self.
Sure. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. I want to make sure that the columns are in the right. Yeah.
And this is for the whole school, right? Grades 3 through 8.
Yes, it is. Actually, I'm afraid, I don't know how that happened. Yeah, this is wrong. The titles on this are backwards. So I don't know how that happened. But the met or exceeded was at 29% in 2015-16. It went to 20%. It went down. That was the year that so much of the commotion happened. Our scores had dropped quite a bit. It raised to 42%. Last year, it dipped just a little bit, back down to 36%. But you can see from the standards not met that it was at 40% 2015-16, and it went, standards not met went up to 52%, and then down to 33%, and down to 28%. Sorry, those columns are not correct.
So I think the dashboard is coming out in, I want to say September. They're
Yeah, well, part of it will come out in September. Then the local indicators have to be in. I think it's normally by the 1st of November. So somewhere in there. So as far as looking at the dashboard, it may take a few more months.
And I think you do a report to us 3 times annually. Is that
I'm going to
correct?
do another report somewhere probably in January.
Okay,
I
so
need
maybe
to
at the
do it.
January meeting, we can review test scores at that point, because we can see your dashboard. It'll be fully loaded, and
Right.
it'll be a little bit easier to read at that point. So
Sure. This graph is accurate, and it shows that blue line is the standards met or exceeded, and you can see it came down slightly this last year. It's still an upward trend, but it came down. Also, the red line, which is the standards not met, you can see consistently comes down, and that's what I was saying, that bubble that you were talking about, that group went to standards nearly met. It doesn't show on that graph, so that number will go up. So I will, at the next meeting, I'll give you a clearer picture on that. If you take the mean scores, overall testing scores for the school, both in ELA and math, that nice trends on those. So overall, the school is doing better as far as the testing. That's continuing, so that's good.
And so you know that the mean scores for each grade level are different, that the baseline is different for each grade level?
Yeah, this is for the school. We run into trouble sometimes unless we manually calculate it, because the state won't do it for small groups, and some of our numbers are really small. So we have groups of 8 kids or 9 kids in a class or a grade. All right. Student survey, just to give you an idea of the climate at the school as far as how the kids feel about it. As far as how the school year had gone for them, this was done towards the end of the school year. As far as very good, 50%, fair, 47%. I was a little bit shocked with that because I expected the numbers to be a little bit higher. How good is your relationship with your teacher? Again, it was almost exactly the same. It was 53% very good, 44% fair. Do you feel like you're making academic progress that you should be? 94% felt good about that. Would you recommend Three River Charter School to your friend? 91% yes. And how do they feel about the cleanliness of the school? 84% thought it was fine. Enough staff on the playground? 80% fine. Do you feel safe at school? 93%. Do you feel bullied at school? 87% feel they do not feel bullied. I was surprised there was a little bit of difference in that. So it was like the kids were saying some more of them were feeling bullied, but they still felt safe, but they felt like they were being bullied. Is the school staff easy to talk to? 84% yes. Can you get help when you need it? 99% yes. And do you feel the rules at TRCS are fair? 97%. We had a rating system for them to rate the school 1 to 10, and it came out 8.2.
So Roger, what grades took the survey? Because this only represents about 68 kids.
First and second didn't.
Okay.
You're right. It was grades 3 through 8. Okay. Areas to focus on this upcoming year. We'll continue our focus on community outreach, and we have a lot of good activities going on with that, but we really feel like we need to do more in the community. So we'll be focused on that. We also will be focused on implementing a new math curriculum. We have a focus from the board on data analytics, and we have a new committee out of that group, and we've been meeting regularly on reviewing the various forms of data that we have available and coming up with good measurements as far as how the school is doing and what actions we need to take. We're working very hard on obtaining the new facilities for the school. We do have a lease extension in place for the college for this next year. That's good. And as far as where we're at on the new property, we're currently in escrow on that property, and we're working to remove all the contingencies that we have in place. The property we're looking at requires a coastal permit, so there's a lot of requirements that we're going through for that. But we're headed towards the end of it, where we think that we would probably proceed with the purchase, but we have a few more things to do. We're working with the city, and we have a few engineering tasks that we're currently doing. We will be back when I come and do the next proposal. I'll also have to do a proposal to you probably towards the end of the year, somewhere after Smarter Balance. Hopefully we'll start getting some results for that because the MOU that we currently have in place with you is good for 2 years, and that means June 2020 is when that would need to be opted for a 3-year extension. So we'll be asking for that next year. So I'll have to wait late enough in the year to have some information for you. But we'll be asking for that. We'll also be continue with the implementation of our MTSS program, excuse me, which is a multi-tiered support system that we started implementing last year. We're in our 2nd year of that, and that's going pretty good, and basically comes down to support for all kids, so in a nutshell, that's what it's all about. And then also we decided for a little bit more help for me, as well as for the longevity of the school, we added a new assistant director position that'll be working with us. And so I'm happy to say that Kim has taken that position, so she'll be working into that role.
Congratulations.
And the long-term plan on that is for her to, she'll finish getting her administrative services credential, and then she'll be moving into the school director position in a few years. So that's down the road. We're also working on replacing her in her classroom, but this next couple of years, she'll be working both administratively and out of the classroom. So that's a good thing for us. Anyway, so any questions? Comments?
Science, are you going to implement new curriculum for science?
We don't have a new curriculum for science planned at this time. And we're still, we've done some training this last year. We sent a couple of teachers for training on the NGSS. And we have a couple programs that we have in place, but we haven't adopted a new curriculum yet. But we're talking about that. It's just kind of a timing thing for us. We know we couldn't do it this next year, but we do know that once things settle down as far as the new curriculums that are becoming available, they're changing all the time. We've been looking at them, but it just doesn't seem like it's quite ready yet. But we're thinking about it. We're ready to go. We'll probably adopt something in the springtime for the following year.
And then I just had, we had 80 pages of policy this meeting, and in it was conveniently charter school new laws. And I was just curious, I don't know that we've ever seen a safety plan, but that's going to be a new requirement.
what?
A safety plan, school safety plan. So that's going to be something that has to be presented in a petition. So I imagine we want to see a safety plan, and it says by March 1. So if you were a new charter school and were applying to a school, you'd need to have that part of your package.
Okay.
And also, I think you're ahead of this. Some charter schools weren't transparent, weren't following the Brown Act or the California Public Records Act. And so I think you guys are ahead of that.
Mm-hmm. We have a
and-
safety plan too, but
And Roger,
Yeah.
it's the same safety plan that you upload to CDE, so you
Yeah.
already do it. We usually present our safety plans in September, only because it doesn't make sense to present the community a safety plan when the year's 3
at the
months
end of the
being
year,
over.
yeah. Mhm.
So you're welcome to do that when we do it as well. It's your call.
Okay.
And then I just wanted to know if you have your wage schedule online, your discipline report, and you have a due process procedure
Yeah,
that's
we've been
working?
reporting on that, and I know it's changed as far as, you now have to report even more as far as that goes. So, yeah, we will have all that
Great.
available. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
And I just want to comment that I do appreciate the demographics. That's been a nice change. That was part of the MOU, but you guys are doing, you're making strides faster than we had anticipated, so good job on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we want to do that. We want to make you feel good about it, help you feel good about it, and then we'll be coming in next year. But yeah, things are working better. We didn't know because there's a couple of hurdles we have regarding busing and lunch programs and things like that that seemed pretty major to us, but it's working out. Yeah,
Thank you to your staff.
thanks. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Rector.
Thank you very much. All right, I don't see any people that I don't know, but is Roseanne here?
And we have no report from them.
Okay. All right. Okay. And then, we have no Barry, but
I have his facilities report.
okay.
Barry had an unexpected engagement this evening and asked if Wendy and I could report on this. So he sent me what had happened this summer. And so here I'm going to read off his list. They completed 49 work orders. They did wrought repair and door flooring replacement in the district office entrance. If you've been able to come to the district office, we finally have a new door. So we're incredibly excited about that. They did gutter replacement on the district office and Redwood, room 66. Special services office moved to Barry's old office, so we're still finishing that. Carolyn's not completely in her office yet, but there's carpet and paint that's coming in. Roof replacement on the middle school storage shed. They repaired underground water leaks at Redwood and Dana Gray, replaced 6 water tubes in the middle school boiler. They serviced all the boilers, plumbing repairs in the middle school cafeteria. They replaced check valves and rerouted copper piping. They had piping repairs, replacement in Redwood boiler room. They reinforced the wall in the ag kitchen area and installed fiberglass reinforced plastic sheeting. They installed cabinets in the ag classroom, installed 2 commercial freezers and 1 commercial fridge in the ag room. They added wood chips at Dana Gray and Redwood playgrounds, 100 yards each. They're almost completed replacing the playground border at Dana Gray. All buses were inspected and they are ready for service. The mechanic is still out and not expected to return to work for another 8 to 12 weeks, so Barry has been playing double duty. And I just have to give a shout out for Barry Silva because he's kind of our et al. Guy. He is a licensed mechanic, so when things go awry, he can fill in as the mechanic. When we have a bus driver sick, Barry actually has a Class A license and can drive a bus. We had an issue one time going to our leadership trip last year, and the van was making funny noises on Highway 20, and Barry comes out in his car. He switched the vans with us, and he got under the van when we were on Highway 20. I'm like, this is like an OSHA complaint waiting to happen. But he looked at it. He knew it was wrong. He took our van back, gave us the new van. He does a great job, so I just want to give him a little bit of accolades there. So our maintenance department has done a lot, and they're busy. Lots of big jobs, lots of big jobs. And they're still not done, but we're getting close.
And you've got a new lawnmower that I hear works really well.
It's been great. It's fun to watch it.
I was going to say, you should give us an email when it's in operation so we can just drive by and just peek at what this machine looks like. What does a machine of that rate look like?
I know, we're so excited about the lawnmower.
Hey, it's not just a lawnmower, it's a $90,000 lawnmower.
Yeah, well, not
It's a little more
exactly
than a
that
lawnmower.
much, but thank you, City of Fort Bragg, for helping us get that, because it's really going to improve the fields by a lot, so we're very excited, so.
Okay. Thank you, Becky, Barry, and Wendy. Okay. All right, so summer school, Tina.
Okay, so Tina Krenoff served as our summer school principal again this year. We were incredibly fortunate for that. Tina also serves as EL coordinator, and so that intersection of migrant education, those families and children, and with our ESL, our EL coordinator. And I'm going to let her report out on the successes because we've had a few this summer.
And I'm going to share with you, I'm sorry this wasn't in the board packet, but some photos from, because we had a very exciting summer school session this year.
Okay, and then I'll have you stop talking so that
Oh, right.
the
I
public,
always,
we love to hear, but so does the public.
thank you.
And while she distributes that, I have to thank Becky because an email came in for additional migrant education funding, and we talked about this in the spring. She clicked yes on that, and we're now moving from an outdated summer school curriculum that we've had for many years and has been brought up as an issue, and we bought all new Common Core aligned rigorous curriculum that will be implemented next summer.
And along those lines, that curriculum is also exciting because our English language arts curriculum will be from the publisher of our regular K-5 language arts curriculum, Benchmark Advance. And so there's a nice dovetail and connection to our regular ELA curriculum, and our math curriculum will be online. And so it'll help our students, especially 2nd through 5th grade, to get used to doing some mathematics online, which prepares them for the CASP. So that's really nice. So my name is Tina Krenoff, and I was incredibly fortunate to be summer school principal again this year for Migrant Ed and Special Education Extended Session. Our migrant education summer school consisted of 1 classroom pre-KK with Maureen Smith, who worked magic Some of those students had never been in school before, so that was their first exposure. One classroom of first and second graders with Herman Henderson, and 1 3 to 5 classroom with Margaret Normoyle, and we served 58 students in the Migrant Ed program. We also had a fabulous addition, and that's what those photographs are that I shared with you. We had, through Migrant Ed, a binational teacher, Jose Pablo de la Cruz, who came to us straight from Mexico and had his own, he had one class for TKK, one class for first and second graders, and one class for third through fifth grade. And he had his own classroom. And his focus was on the culture and history of Mexico, so that our Migrant Ed students had a connection back to their ancestry and their culture and their heritage and the families that they have left behind there. And it was an absolute joy to watch him. In fact, 1 week through, we said, can we hire you for the school year? Could you please be a kindergarten teacher here? And he had already signed a contract for a school district in Utah, and it's such an honorable young man, he wouldn't do anything like breaking a contract. So, but they did arts and crafts, piñatas, music, they cited poetic works, and so on and so forth. And to see those kids who you see, that was the celebration ceremony in the evening at the very end of summer school. But many of those girls came dressed like that every day. Their parents came every morning and spent a lot of time. In fact, all of Pablo's prep time, they spent talking to him about what he was doing and, things in their national culture and everything. And he barely got his work done in the mornings. And he had 2 parent nights, and he had an outstanding attendance. I mean, for the closing ceremony, we had over 100 parents come. And those of you who follow how we struggle with our ELACs and DLACs to get parents to come and participate, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we built a relationship with those parents that will continue for years to come, that they will, embrace us as they embraced us this summer and come to our ELACs and our DLACs and be part of our great family in Fort Bragg Unified. So just looking at the numbers here, I mean, I just could go on and on gushing. But, so we had growth in all grade levels, as you can see. 57% of the students in pre-KK gained in math, 63 first and second, third and fifth, 70% ELA. You can see the numbers, especially pre-KK, which I attribute to the fact that we had a pre-KK teacher who usually teaches that grade level and who knows curriculum and who knows pedagogy and did a fantastic job with those kids. So thank you, Maureen Smith, again. So we have purchased new curriculum, and we're very excited. And for next year's summer school, we will implement that curriculum in both areas. We had 37 students who participated in our special education extended school years, pre-K through 12th grade. The Migrant Ed was at the Dana Gray site this past year. The special education classes stayed in their regular classrooms, so it was spread throughout the district. So our success was the binational teachers by far. Challenges was that the curriculum is outdated. We've had it for I don't know how many years, probably 12 years. And it was not Common Core aligned. Now we're moving into the Common Core aligned. And attendance was inconsistent. And we struggled with our Migrant Aid liaison, Teresa Rodriguez, had an accident earlier last year and was not able to participate with us. And Maricruz, who filled in for her, was wonderful, but that was not her area of expertise. So we will continue to work with Migrant Education to make sure that the liaison is available and is familiar with our families enough to make sure that they come, because they sign up and then they don't come, but they don't come consistently. And especially for those families who travel to Mexico on vacation in December or January, it's really important that they continue school. So Carolyn Carini has already started talking to Migrant Ed about planning some activities that will promote better attendance, perhaps through the final days of summer school. For example, it's been suggested a field trip. I certainly think that the binational teacher, if we continue that, will be a huge draw, especially for those parents who participated and the students who participated this past year. And again, the new curriculum. So that is my report. Any questions or comments on summer school?
So I recall that the attendance, that's kind of always a struggle, consistent attendance.
Yes.
Do we really know if it was much less, or is it similar to last year? Because we don't really have a number to know if it was
That's
very
true. I
similar.
don't have a comparison number, and I probably should have had that. I apologize. It was
Pretty
similar.
similar.
It was
Because I just
pretty
don't know
similar.
if it's because the time frame, if it's always right after school ends.
Yes,
So is
it's-
that's just the best
They
probably
have
for
2
staff?
days off, and then they go back to school. The
Right.
parents usually really want the kids to be there, but they also listen to their children in terms of, my friends are not in summer school, I would like to play rather than go to
Right.
school.
And this is not an unusual problem. So one of the conversations I'm having with Migrant Ed is a lot of programs encounter this in the summer. You hit July 4th, you hit summer, the kids want to go play, they go on camping trips. And so we're working alongside them to see what's working in other districts and how we can provide more incentives for systematic attendance.
Right, because I was just wondering if it shifted just slightly, if that would make a difference with other districts, if they're seeing success, if it's just maybe giving them 2 weeks off and then starting, or if it's more of a staff issue that you start right after, or probably doesn't really matter because it's summertime.
So they'll show up in the beginning. So what the data shows us is that the kids will appear in the beginning, but at the end of summer school, it starts to trickle off. And so what we need to do is get more activities and incentives towards the end of summer school to keep them motivated to keep coming in every day.
And I think what our binational teacher did with the closing ceremony and how they rehearsed and rehearsed to present and.
You need Pablo the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, so, okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Tina and
Thank you.
Carolyn. Okay. All right, do we have someone from CSEA? I don't see anybody. Okay. All right, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda consent items. Is there anything that needs to be pulled or discussed?
Before we go
Oh.
on, may I just introduce the new FBDTA president? Could
Oh,
Sarah, do you want to come up to the podium really quickly? We actually removed it from the board because she didn't have a report, but then we added the reception in, and so that's why she was here to support Tina. So, because we, so.
I don't have anything specific to report, but I'm happy to be serving as the FBDTA president.
Your name?
Sarah McGee.
Thank you.
And I suppose I'm excited to be working with you all and representing the teachers. We have really wonderful teachers here, and I feel like the work we do as a union supports the kids. So that's my reason for being involved. And thank you.
It's pretty exciting. Sarah is our TOSA, our teacher on special assignment at Dana Gray. She and Angie Daniels, her counterpart, who's the TOSA at Redwood, did a wonderful training today with our teachers. People were incredibly excited. They're doing great work. So we are moving in a wonderful direction, and it's very exciting to have Sarah lead FBDTA. And it's interesting because Angie was the previous president, so now they're both TOSAs, which really shows the level of teaching caliber that we have in our district and how they participate on so many levels. So thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. And great leadership skills.
Okay, thank you. So back to the agenda consent items. Is there any questions or anything that needs to be pulled?
I don't think so.
I move to approve the agenda consent items.
I second.
Okay, any discussion? Oh, that's not a, sorry. All those in favor?
Yes.
Okay, opposed? Okay,
You can read it, Diana?
We can. 7.1 warrants for August 2nd and August 5th. Minutes for the regular meeting of June 13 and regular meeting minutes for June 27th. 7.3 is personnel action report. 7.4 is intern permits. 7.5 is administration work calendars. And 7.6 is Williams reporting for the third quarter.
okay. Thank you. All right, moving on to the action. Everybody doing okay? Okay. So 8.1 is board policy 3470 for debt issuance and management. So this is something new for our district. Looking forward to
This
see.
is a fairly new update on board policies, and we haven't had it before because we didn't need it. It's one of those that we sort of prioritize the ones that come to you as we need them, and if So because we're going to be discussing the refunding of some of our existing bonds and other topics to which this might relate, it's important that we have this board policy in place. It's straight out of CSBA. There are no options. It's just a requirement that we have this board policy before we proceed with anything like that.
And it did say that you looked at it and very closely.
The board
Your
policy,
office? Mm-hmm.
It's right from CSBA.
Right. There actually is one optional paragraph, but it didn't seem very controversial, so it's the cost of debt issued. I'm trying to think where. I don't have it on the page. I printed it out. Let's see. The 5th page, if it was truly a book. I'm not counting the cover page. In the middle.
The long-term debt?
I wish I should look on here.
Is that what you're talking about, Diana?
She's trying to find it on.
On here, so I can.
That sounds to me like a prudent thing to do.
6 of, yeah, it's not controversial, but there is an option. It's page 6 of 11. About the middle of the page. It doesn't have a caption, which is kind of funny. Well, relationship of debt to district facilities, program, and budget. It's 3 paragraphs down. But it doesn't seem controversial.
Yeah, it just says the cost of debt issued from major capital repairs or replacements shall be evaluated against the potential cost of delaying such repairs and or replacing such facilities. So
It's common sense.
I would think that would be a prudent thing to do before you decide to issue debt. I'm surprised it's optional, to be honest.
Okay, any other questions for Wendy or?
So out of my own curiosity, being a new board member, what would happen if we didn't adopt this board policy?
We would not be permitted to enter into either of the next 2 items without having this board policy in place.
Okay, fair enough. Seems like a good
It's
idea.
basically making sure that districts are actually doing their due diligence when they enter into these kinds of transactions.
Anything else? Okay.
Make a motion to adopt board policy 3470.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion?
Trustee Paoli?
Yes.
Trustee Makala?
Yes.
Trustee Metzen?
Yes.
Trustee Schneider?
Yes.
And President Babcock?
Yes. Okay, then we have 8.2, exploration of school improvement measure.
So I have a question about these 2, and I'm going to ask Greg and then introduce him. So we have that piece, and then there's the resolution for the refunding. Do you want to do one of them before the other, or do you care which order they're in?
Doesn't matter to me.
Doesn't matter to you?
Whatever you want to do.
Okay.
Easiest would be probably to do the refunding resolution first.
Okay, so can we move 8.3 before 8.2?
Yes. But, I mean, we didn't do that, but I think
Okay.
we don't have a huge.
It makes a little more sense,
I
I
wondered
think, in
that
the
when
scheme
I,
of things, so. Okay, so I will introduce Greg Isom from Isom Advisors. He has been helping us with this potential refunding. It's sort of a different word for refinancing some of the bonds. Some of our issues, as they reach a certain level of maturity, are eligible to be refunded, is what they call it. And they get looked at, and if they are, if there's a potential overall savings to the community that's significant enough to warrant the 113 pages that are behind the resolution, then we take a serious look at it. And that's where we are, because this one is, actually the number's increasing. We started at around $1 million that we will save the community over the length of these particular issues. And that has even gone higher due to bond economics. So, Greg, take it away.
Perfect, thank you. If you just wanted, in the presentation, go to page 13, which is specifically about the refunding opportunity. So as Wendy described, school districts have the ability that when they actually sell bonds, in the big, thick documents that districts get, and when they sell them, there is some provisions in there called call provisions, which allows school districts, or any municipality for that matter, that they have the ability to refinance their outstanding or old debt if interest rates allow, okay? And so most districts, it takes anywhere from 6, 7, 8, 9, or even 10 years in order for it to pencil out, because the law says that you can do a refi at least, but you have to have at least $1 of savings. I mean, but if you're only gonna save $1, it doesn't really make sense, right? And so there are some metrics that are used when municipalities look at refinancing debt, and I'll touch base in that in this presentation here. But just for the most part, on page 13, this shows you the bonds that we're looking to refinance were from the election of 2008, Series 2011, which I think were the Series B bonds. You can see in the bold on 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth, or fourth bullet point down, when we did this presentation a couple weeks ago and sent it to your administration, the savings were a little bit over $1 million. But obviously, if you guys have been paying attention to the news with the Chinese tariffs and the yuan, or whatever you call it, I mean, interest rates for bonds have dropped almost 30 plus basis points in the last 10 days. So we've had some school districts where their refinancings have actually doubled from they were $1 million 3 weeks ago, and now they're $2 million. We haven't run those calcs yet because we'd rather start a little bit lower and then finish high for you guys. The one key component when it comes to refinancing debt, you can see it on that last bullet point, is it does not add to the term. So unlike, when you do a home mortgage and you refi your home, it goes back to a 30-year mortgage. Yes, your payments are lower. When it comes to school bonds, the term stays exactly the same as what it was, but you're able to just swap out old interest rates for new interest rates. On page 14, just shows you the bond buyer 20 Geo Bond Index, showing you what the average interest rates were, what the current interest rates are, the low and the high. So you can see that right now it's a pretty opportune time for districts to issue debt, whether it's new bonds or whether they have an opportunity to refinance their old bonds. Okay.
And if you look at the dip in 2016, that was the last time we did one of these.
Exactly. I
When you
remember
did your
about
private
3 years
placement,
ago.
yeah. Okay. On page 15, there are different ways for school districts to have savings go to the community. There's something called level savings. There's deferred savings, and there's upfront savings. The vast majority of school districts that do upfront savings, this was kind of done during the recession, towards like if you could save your community member like an extra $20 a year for the next 3 years, that'd be a great thing to do. Because for the most part, refinancings, they don't save the average community member that much money. Maybe $1 or $2, maybe 80 cents off of the tax rate. But when you pool all that money together in a community, that's where the savings really come in. Or sometimes if you have a really, really large taxpayer, who represents 5% of the tax base, that's actually going to be a significant number to this person. So the vast majority of school districts take those savings as level savings, which is pretty much kind of uniform looking savings. Uniform means just the same amount every single year. Or they do deferred savings, which there is no difference in someone's tax bill for the first 10, 15 years, but sometimes you can actually lop off an entire year or two on the back end of someone's mortgage if you want to look at it that way. On page 16, this just shows you the interest rates from what your old rates were compared to what the new rates are. As I said, these rates are old from 2 weeks ago, so the savings are definitely a lot more. But just to give you an idea on how these things compare, and obviously that in between the yellow and the red is what represents the taxpayer savings. Okay. On page 17, this is the actual savings. So you can see savings starting in 2020 to 2041. There's roughly, let's just call it $45,000 to $50,000 to your tax base every single year for the next 21 years. Generates the $1 million, probably closer right now to 1.6 or 1.8. 8.7%. If you see that second bullet point where it says the industry accepted threshold for present value savings is a minimum of 3%. Okay, based on current savings, it generates 8.7. So You know, when I talked about that initial number, well, yeah, legally you have to be able to save $1, but what politically makes sense or financially makes sense? If you could achieve 3%, then it financially makes sense for a school district to do so. So you're at 8.7, almost 3 times what one would consider the industry standard when it comes to refinancing debt for taxpayers. Okay. Next steps. If this was of any district or any interest of you guys to save taxpayers money, these are the steps that we've laid out for your school district. Obviously, we have a board meeting where we're discussing this, where I believe you guys have the resolution to approve. The next steps are that we actually have to get the district's bonds rated, which in essence is like a credit score. You guys haven't done that for many years, to where we have to have a conference call with the rating agency to where they kind of put their stamp on what they think your district's credit score should be, which tells us what we're allowed to have a borrowing interest rate at. Okay. Once we do that, it takes about 6-7 days to get a rating back, is when we would post the POS, which is the preliminary official statement, which is that gigantic book you guys probably saw. If you guys read it, congratulations. You probably would be the only board that's ever done that. And so that is what goes to prospective buyers of school bonds. You know, so when you sell bonds, you're not going to a local bank, because a local bank can't buy this type of bond that we're selling. So there's going to be bankers from New York to Chicago to LA who are going to be interested in buying these bonds. And they take a look at that big, thick book, which is the prospectus, to determine, do I want to purchase Fort Bragg bonds or not? Right now, bonds are a really attractive option. Even though rates are so low, people would rather buy secured school bonds than put their money in the stock market right now. So once we get that rating, we're allowed to post that POS, and then we can lock in the actual interest rates for your school district's bonds. I think, you know, if you guys wanted to do this, we were proposing locking rates, I think, in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And then once those rates are locked, the savings are then officially locked in, and there will be a difference in the taxpayers' tax rate bill for the next 21 years. I try to make this quick and painless because I know you might have questions on the thick resolution. The resolution that you guys have in front of you is just the legal parameters that a school district has to do when they are approving school debt. There's a gazillion whereases. There's a bunch of fill in the blanks. The POS, if you guys notice at the preliminary official statement, there's blanks throughout this thing. And it's super awkward as a school board to have to approve something that isn't complete yet. And so it's kind of backwards in that it can't be completed until you guys give authority to proceed with us, and then we can, in the next couple of weeks, start filling in the blanks. So that's why there's a bunch of blanks in those legal documents, which is kind of awkward to approve, but that's the process that takes place. And I can answer any questions about refinancing or the board resolution, or anything else for that matter.
So of our, I guess back in '08, we had a ballot for 16 million. So we have obviously 9.5 at the most that we would be refining. Is that right? But it's going to take us
That's
20.
what's eligible to be refunded at this time.
So how much do we owe? Is that the amount, or that's
You
not?
want a balance? No. This is a piece of all of them. I have a spreadsheet this wide with all of the issuances.
Right.
And so this is a small piece, but I have the balance if you'd like it.
Right. I was just curious because this is another 20 years, so we had.
Oh, these
40s.
all go, they go various maturities all the way through 47.
Okay.
Right now is what we have. And I have it right here. I actually pulled it up for Scott.
And a lot of the resolution is boilerplate. On page 2 of the resolution, there is a typo. I think it should be compliant on the very top, whereas.
Okay, our balance at July 1st of 2018 was 31,717,000.
So that's of the 16.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's the total payments. Nope. I'm sorry, that's total payments. Okay, total. Where's my balance? Balance as of July 1st. Oh, no, that's right. That is
Because
right.
that's probably payments in principal, and that's about double what we had the voters vote. And that's fairly reasonable.
Yes.
And so of that 31 million, we can only refi 9.5.
So how it works is, when you sell in different pieces of bonds, and there's the call provisions. And so the call provisions say when you can or when you cannot, because if you pass the bond and you sold the bond right now, it's literally impossible to refinance the bonds 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now. Just because there's a thing called negative arbitrage. And as I said, if it doesn't pencil out, you cannot refinance that debt. So you guys have refinanced 2 separate times with your bonds. And those bonds, when you do refunding like that, you're only allowed to do 1 advance refunding per series of bonds. And so then you typically then have to wait another 10 years in order to do that, or you have to do it at a taxable basis. So as Wendy was pointing out, your bonds are completely being monitored right now to determine what's refundable and what's not. If anything else penciled out on this exact date, those bonds would be included in here. So at this exact moment, only this series of bonds is eligible to be refinanced at this time. Not to say that 2-3 years from now, some other bonds could be in play, but for this exact moment, even with interest rates as low as they are, these are the only ones that pencil out.
Okay. This is the 2011 series, right?
Yes.
Okay.
You're using the word refinance and refunding. Can you, same thing?
So your refinancing is one and the same. It's just sometimes there's a terminology when you say refunding bonds, which are the bonds that you are actually post-doing, versus you're refinancing your existing debt. We're talking about the same thing, just one little tweak.
It's an easier term for most people to wrap their head around.
And then to note that people know that this has nothing to do with our general fund. This is totally separate, and it's going to save our taxpayers in our county.
Over the long run.
Correct.
Right. So it's not something that's taking away from our day-to-day. It's something totally different. So that needs to be clarified.
So we're selling more bonds out to the...
No.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
Yes. So what we're doing, you have the ability is to take the existing bonds that are out there. This 8.8 million that, investors in New York have in their portfolio. And because you have these call provisions, you're able to take those bonds away. And those people are aware that there is a risk that bonds could be refinanced into the future. So you're taking those bonds and then selling new bonds just at a lower interest rate.
You're replacing the ones that are out there.
Correct. You don't get any extra money. You don't get extra project money. This is strictly just taxpayer savings. And anyone who purchases municipal debt knows that this is a risk, that when they buy bonds, if there's a call feature meaning the ability to refinance at a later date, this is always a risk. So there are different types of bonds. There's some bonds that are called non-callable bonds, which means that if you buy a non-callable bond, there is no chance that those bonds could be refinanced into the future. But you pay a little bit extra for a non-callable bond.
So what happens to those people that own those bonds?
It's out of their portfolio. They don't get to collect on it anymore. They can rebuy your new bonds if they wanted to. So it's a unique feature for municipalities that they have that option to do that.
And your fees or anything are all wrapped up in this, so
Our
it's
fees,
not.
everything is already cooked. So the savings that we are showing right now is net all the fees.
Okay.
It's all good. Less is better. Less is more.
Any other questions? Okay. All right, so we are actually going to approve the resolution?
Yes,
8.3. Okay. So we're looking at 8.3, resolution 1911, which is refunding / refinancing.
So I move to approve resolution 1911 with the one typo on page 2.
Check out as well.
I second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Trustee Metzen,
Yes.
Trustee Schneider,
Yes.
Trustee Paoli,
Yes.
Trustee Makala,
Yes.
and President Babcock.
Yes. Anything from the public? Should have done that probably before the motion. When it dwindles down, I'm not so good about it.
Just
Offering,
wait.
sorry.
Any of you-
Okay,
Good
so then
stuff,
we're,
huh, Sarah?
we're going back to exploration of school improvement measure.
So we talked a little bit about this at the June 27th meeting. There were a few meetings in June. I was forgetting which one it was. After having reviewed the needs assessment, we decided that we needed to look at how we might finance some of those needs that were in there, and as a, also prioritize and finance, taking care of some of those things. And take it away, Greg.
Okay. Good evening. So let me just quickly explain. I mean, the refi is pretty basic stuff, just like refining your home mortgage. When it comes to exploration of school improvement measures, let me just give a little bit of background of who I am. So Greg Isom with Isom Advisors. We do roughly, let's call it 40 to 45% of all the successful school improvement bond measures in the state of California. And in Northern California, and when I say northern, like north of Marin County, we probably do 95% of all the successful bonds. Okay. On pages 2 and 3, you can see the school districts that we worked with in 2018 and 2016. And the reason why I list all these guys, it's not to say, wow, look how many we did. It's more to say, look at all the unique school districts that we work in. And the reason I use unique is because I'd say that 90% of the school districts that I work in, at some point I'll say, you know what, Greg, we're a unique community and you don't really understand. And I say, stop. I understand you guys are unique, but so is every single school district here. And so any type of issue or problem or great thing, I've seen it in these communities. And the other thing I take a lot of pride in with pages 2 and 3 are the types of districts that we work in, that these aren't, Oakland Unifieds, Berkeley Unifieds, to where it's really easy to pass these things. We're passing bonds in Covelo, passing bonds in Garberville, doing some in Siskiyou County, farm country in Butte County, rice farmers. And so I've seen any type of issue. I've seen districts that have, in the case of Winters Unified, if you guys know where Winters is, Winters did a school bond in 2014, 2016, and in 2018. Three consecutive cycles. All three were successful, but it took a lot of voter education to help these guys out. So I put this stuff here just to say, maybe you've seen some of these communities and you said, wow, I didn't even know something could pass there. But they can, okay? So I've been working with school districts since 2004, and I travel up and down the state, and as I said, I do the vast majority of the work in Mendocino County, Humboldt, and Sonoma. Mendocino County, we're currently working with Mendocino Unified and Ukiah Unified for school improvement measures next year. So it's a good time for school districts to do it. Not only is it, interest rates are really low, but also the fact that, construction needs aren't going away, and in fact, they're just getting to be more expensive than they were last year. I have 4 kids, all under the age of 10. They used to have a full head of hair, and they're all in public schools, or 3 of them are. So I know about kindergartners because my 5-year-old's gonna be in kindergarten. And I feel so bad for that teacher who has to deal with my kid. My first 2 are great. Okay.
They can watch this on YouTube.
I know exactly.
Oh man. It's everyone knows Dane. Dane's a crack up. Okay. So on page 5, how school bonds work for school districts is everything is based around the assessed valuation of a school district. So if you can kind of see right in the middle of this page here, I listed out the historical assessed valuation from 2004 to current. Then you can see on the right-hand side is the year over change. And as you notice, during the recession, you guys, dipped 3%, -1%, -1%, 0.8, 0.78, and you kind of come out of it pretty nicely. You know, this is nice compared to some of these Central Valley school districts to where they still haven't even come back from the recession, to where their assessed valuation is almost lower than what it was in 2008. Okay, so you guys in Humboldt County especially, you know, you guys didn't get really hit that hard by the recession because you didn't have all these gigantic housing developments, so you didn't experience the boom and the bust. So that's actually good because you've had a pretty steady tax base. On the right-hand side is the history of the district. So you can see you guys passed bond in 2003 and 2008, 69% voter support. And you can also see what your 2018-19 tax rate is. So right now, property owners in your district are paying $114 per 100,000 of assessed valuation. Okay. For a unified school district, that's pretty standard. You know, as I said, in the case of Winters, I think Winters is close to 200. Windsor, you know, unified is like 150 or 160. You know, Ukiah, I think, is higher than you guys. So, you know, when it comes to paying for school facilities, you know, it's either you can get some money from the state, but in order for you to get money from the state, you have to qualify, saying that your schools are so old or these classrooms are so old that you get some matching money. But even if you do qualify for matching money, the key word is match. You know, the state's not going to give school districts free money anymore. So it's a 60-40 match. I think you guys do qualify for some components of some state money. But for the most part, school, you know, the governor said school districts, you guys are on your own. And that's kind of what Jerry Brown said when he was governor. He was against statewide bonds because he says, school districts, you want to make improvements to your own facilities, you're on your own. Okay. So what we're here to talk about tonight are what are some of the options for your school district? Is it a possibility? What's out there? So as I said, you guys have you know, a big tax base. I think you're according to your tax base, maybe the second largest tax base in all of Mendocino County for school districts. And so on page 6, we get to the point of, well, what can your district actually obtain if it was to do some type of, you know, local school improvement bond measure? So you can kind of see on 6 in that chart there, it says 45, 50, 60. You can see on the far right-hand side, it says total bond proceeds at 25, 28, 34. Below the box, in small, really small print now, it says assumes AV growth of 3.5%. So the 3.5% is a key number because flipping back to the previous page, anytime that you exceed 3.5% growth, that means that your tax rate, what you told voters, is going to go down. If you go under 3.5, that means that your tax rate will actually go up. And since no one has any control, and no one knows, county assessor, tax collector, no one has any clue what your tax base is going to do 15 years from now. You generally need to put in some type of, in our opinion, a conservative assessed valuation growth rate assumption, because you don't want to say pie in the sky and say, we're going to assume you're going to grow at 5% every single year. Because then what happens when you don't grow at 5%? Your tax rate goes through the roof and your community doesn't like you anymore because they said, you told us this and now it's this. Okay? So typically anything under 4% in the state of California is considered to be pretty conservative. If you're 3.5% or even lower than that, that's very conservative. So that's what we used right now without knowing what's going to take place into the future. And you can see we did the different tax rates. And the reason we give different tax rates is because every community's appetite for school bonds, for that matter, is different, right? You know, so if you can generate 60 generates a much larger number. You know, but if your community says, I don't want to do 60, I'm willing to do $49.99, well, you know, it's going to generate $28 million because you have some needs assessment that was done, which I just heard, and I don't know what was the amount, do we know?
34?
It was right at 30.
30.
Oh.
Yeah, I can't remember. I haven't looked at it.
I thought it was
Mid-30s.
Okay, I was gonna say, if it was 34, I swear on my life, we didn't talk and confirm that this was the exact number, so that's just a complete coincidence.
I think we actually came up to that number with a reasonable expectation of
Inflation.
costs increasing over time.
Sure.
So it may have been like in the upper 20s, but we knew that
Gave you a little
reality
bit of a buffer.
had been being gone through this a couple of times, that by the
Yeah.
time we get to the end of it, there's no way it's only going to be that, so.
Okay. You know, and so if it happens to be lower than 34, that just means the tax rate's going to be lower. So what you guys have is flexibility. You know, if your number was 38 million, like I put in bullet point number 2, you know, there's different ways to achieve that. You know, one is instead of selling your bonds in 20, 22, and 24, you would maybe add one in 20, 27. So each time that you pass a bond of 34 million, using this example, you don't get all 34 million right out of the gate. You sell in different chunks. Just kind of like what you just approved for the refinancing. That was a chunk from the bond from 2008, because the law says that whatever you sell, you're supposed to spend it within a 3-year period. Okay, so like in the case of these really large districts, you know, like LA Unified, who passes a bond for $7 billion, you couldn't spend that if you wanted to. It's like impossible. And so you sell it in chunks of a couple $100 million, and that's how they fall within the IRS rules. Okay. So this is just a complete preliminary analysis without knowing what your community's appetite is, without even knowing what your appetite is, but just to give you an idea of what your budget, max budget is if you wanted to do a local school improvement bond measure. Okay, 34 million to 38 is what I'd say is your max, but that doesn't mean you have to go to your max. Okay.
And it's a 30-year term, but what are the increments? Are they usually 5-year increments, or what is the increments to do the chunks of?
You mean when to sell them?
Right.
Complete discretion up to the board. So right here, I'm just showing every 2 years. Mm-hmm. But it could be every 3 years.
And is that to coordinate with the oversight committee? I mean, is that how do you time that where this committee's making sure that you're spending the money that you want to spend?
So how
do you decide?
So normally how that falls in is, well, how often are we going to sell bonds? Is, generally school districts have some type of facility subcommittee who's going to be working with the architect, who's going to be working with the administration, who's going to be working with your facilities guy. And you guys are going to say, okay, well, taking a look at this plan, we know that we're going to need, $10 million in these first couple of years. So, okay, our first bond's going to be $10 million. But we always leave a little bit of a cushion, knowing that there's cost overruns, knowing that who knows what happens, And so then it's flexibility, which means that, hey, when this 2-year period's coming up, if you run out of money, say, hey, we need another $11 million. Not only to finish the projects from before, but also to get the ball rolling for the next ones. So there'll be some plan that you guys are going to come up with. Not necessarily the oversight committee, because that's more about managing what you have already spent, but you'll probably create a different committee to make recommendations to the board as a whole, saying this is what we think we should do and why. And your architect and your team is going to say, well, we can't just do everything all at once because we can't displace children throughout the district because we have to, house them somewhere. So, that's kind of the fun part. It's like a big puzzle on trying to say, well, how are we going to spend this much money and not disrupt, classroom education?
We did that with the last two, where it was a combination of district staff and the architects, because they know how long things take, and they can map things out. When this is done, this starts. When and they also know relative costs of what each thing is going to be. So they're set up to take advantage of that timing. There was one where we did have to accelerate the issuance of it because we were just running out of money. So this is why you hire the people you do to help you with this, so that we don't have to figure that out, because it's not something that we should do. But that's what it is. And I did look it up, and it was 27.8, and we added 25% on that because we figured that's what usually happens.
And so when it comes to school bonds, you, the school board, have the flexibility to determine when you sell it, how much you sell, and the intervals that you do it. You can say, hey, Greg, I don't want to do 3 series of bonds. I want my money sooner. So how do I do that? Well, I'd say, okay, well, by eliminating Series C and only having 2 bonds, you'll get your money sooner, but you're not going to be able to access $34 million. The number will be, maybe $29 million. So if you say, well, hey, I want more than 34, well, how do we do that? Well, you have to add another series, because there's just all these different, variables that go into place. So you're waiting for your tax base to grow. That's why you kind of space out as well. If your tax base grows, you're able to monitor your tax rate, which will kind of allow you to run a successful bond program. Okay. But at the end of the day, when it comes to the term, when it comes to the timing, it's completely up to you guys. To the amount, just because it says, right, 11.6, 10.9, 11.5, that doesn't mean you follow this. You're going to follow based off of this subcommittee group that you're going to come up with. And they're going to say, hey, for the first phase, it's actually, because our money is going to, just sit there forever because we have to deal with DSA and OPSC and all these other factors, we only need $8 million for the first chunk. Okay, well then you're going to make your first series $8 million. And then in 2022, you're going to say, 10.9 is not going to cut it, I actually need 15. Okay, well then we can make your next one 15. So you can see it's kind of fun.
And the total you end up being having available to you, one reason you can't do it all at once, one of the factors is that you have what they call a bonding capacity. What the people who sell and buy these things say is a reasonable amount of debt for your entity to have. And so that's another reason for kind of staggering them, because you're paying down some and then you're taking on more, and it helps level that out a little bit.
Any other questions about the financial mechanism before I get into the demographics of your community?
How do the decisions affect what's assessed to each parcel?
So how it works is it's not a tax per parcel. It's a tax per the value of the property of the parcel, right? And so every single person is going to have the same rate, but everyone's going to be paying a different amount because of the value of some person's property. So that's why. So like on your tax bill, there'll be some little number which is mildly confusing because it'll probably say something like 0.00114 per 100, and that just means 114. So, if you're a senior citizen, you've been living in your home for the last 30 years, and your home's assessed at $100,000, you're paying $114. If you're someone who just bought some mega mansion up on the hill, and it's cost you $1 million, you're paying $1,000. But it'll show up on the tax bill as the same for every single person.
Right, I understand, but if these decisions about whether to have 3 series or 10 series or 14, do those decisions affect?
No.
They don't?
No, because whatever decision is made, and I'll get into it in the next 3 pages, it's going to be based off of this tax rate. So whether you have 5 series or 10 series or 1 series, it's still just going to be this tax rate right here. And each series doesn't mean another 60 on top of this. So if you want to do for basic math, you could say Series A is representative of a $20 tax rate. Series B, 20, Series C. If we were to throw in a Series D, then each series would be a $15 tax rate. That makes sense? And then when it comes to the selling, I think I got it. Okay. On page 8, I always say these are the most important pages of the presentation, because while you guys may want to do something to improve your facilities, ultimately it is up to your voters to determine if they want to do something or not. Okay. So what I have here are your demographics. So you got about 8,400 total voters. 51% of your voters are registered as Democrats. 2/3 of your voters vote by mail, which is a very high number. And your district, that's a typo. It says district. It should say district has a mature voting population. That always gets them. But if you were to say on paper, what are your challenging demographics? That's the only thing, is that you're going to have a lot of voters that have, they don't have any kids in school, or maybe they don't even have grandkids. Who knows? And so they're going to say, well, why would I want to support something? I mean, that's probably your only, troubling thing. And there's some things that are beneficial, to senior citizens that have no connections to the schools, which, one, since it's based on assessed valuation, you're going to be paying a whole lot less than, someone who just bought their home 5 years ago. I always give the example of my parents who live in the community of Danville, and it's like, they bought their home in 1973, and their assessed valuation's like $102,000, yet like the market value of their home is like 1.8 million, So my mom just votes on everything. Right? My dad's like, no, my mom's like, yes. So that's a big selling point. Safety, we always say, today's students are tomorrow's nurses, doctors, whatnot. So, there's something in it for everyone. And then you have some people who are just pro-education no matter what. So even though you may have people that have no connection, they're just very supportive of school districts. I actually just did a survey down in Santa Cruz County for a district. And what we found out was, because you can chop up the survey in all these different ways, and we found out that we break it into 3 sections. Yes, kids or grandkids currently. Yes, kids or grandkids in the past, and no, never had kids or grandkids in your school district. And what we found in this survey was that the no, never, which represented 50% of the people that took the survey, supported a school bond higher than the yes in the past. Every community is unique. I think some of it's just because people are so done.
Exactly, that they're a little bitter.
I'm already done, and I got a lot more years to go. So as I said, on paper, things look really good. Let's go to the next page, which is voter turnout, which I think is a fascinating page. You can see here, this is how often your voters actually come out to vote. November of 16, November of 18, those were really high turnouts for your district. November of 16, obviously, that's the presidential election, where everyone came out to vote thinking that their vote in California meant something, which it doesn't, but they do. November of 12, high turnout. November of 18 was really unique because, for a lot of other communities, it wasn't high, but for your district, it was extremely high. What we found is that in a lot of Democratic-leaning districts, they had extremely high turnout because of, nationally, they're trying to flip the House in California and all this other stuff, so it was this huge push. So every election brings out a different type of voter. If you're going to say June of 14, 31%, I can almost guarantee you that in June of 14, the type of voter that came out in June of 14 was probably like 70% 65 and older. So the lower turnout that you have, the more senior, generally more conservative voter you're going to get. So there's good dates and there's bad dates when it comes to doing school bond measures. And so a lot of people sometimes ask me, well, Greg, when's the best date for a school district to do a bond measure, right? That's the big question. And the answer is, basic as it sounds, the best date to go is when you're going to win. Genius, right? Incredible. But there's truth to that because sometimes on paper something may look really good, but then things can happen in your district and that you have no control over, and it ended up being a bad date. I have had school districts say presidential, November general elections are the best election dates that you can do. And on paper, you would say yes, strictly on paper, without having anything behind it. And so this district delayed going, and in between then there was this big scandal at the high school. Mm-hmm. And it had nothing to do with the school district. It had nothing to do with anyone, but it's just voter perception was terrible from that point, saying, how dare you? And these guys ended up saying, well, we're still going to go, and they got creamed even in a presidential election year, okay? So I always say the best time to go is when your community says, go. And how do we figure that out? So on page 11 is a timeline. So I have March 2020, because that's the earliest election date for a school district to do something. Because school districts, when they do school bonds, they can only go now like on even years, So you can either go on March of 2020, November of 2020, or you have to wait till June of 2022, okay? And that California, they moved the primary from June to March, which we all know why. If you don't, I'll explain it a little bit. But I think it's a great opportunity for school districts to jump on a very positive ballot, okay? So what does it take in order to be ready? 1, you have to have a needs assessment completed. 2, there needs to be a board meeting where you are exploring the feasibility of a bond measure. And I use the word exploring, that should be like in size 15 font. Because in my opinion, that is all that a school district is ever doing until they approve a type of resolution. You're just trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work, and what does our community want us to do, right? And so what does it take in order to explore? First step is to conduct survey. The survey goes out to represent what does the average community member think about a school improvement bond measure. And you test voter attitudes about the district, you test voter attitudes about specific projects, and you test voter attitudes about tax rates. And so the reason why you ask all these questions is because what we've always found is that you'll have a 100% success rate if voters like you, meaning, right? They like you and trust you, and they see a need. They will support you almost 100% of the time. Taxes, for the most part, isn't that big of an issue if you can check the box with those first 2. If they see a need and they like you guys, they're going to support you, okay? And so through the survey, we ask these questions to find out what they really think about you, and just education in general. How do they compare you to these other, just to California education? How do they rank, some of you guys? What do they think about property values and school bonds? Do they correlate? All this is great information to know. But as I said, at the end of the day, you are specifically going to ask the community, if we were to do a school bond and was going to do this, 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 and this, would you support us or not? Would you vote yes, would you vote no? Okay? And so we gather that information, and there's kind of, I give it like red light, green light, yellow light, which is green light is, if you're 60+% or higher, that's a green light. Let's go to the next stage. If you're below that, that's kind of yellow. If you're 50% or below, that's a red light. Pull the plug, you're done. There's nothing to do because for whatever reason, your community is not interested right at this moment. Okay? So based on the results of the survey is where you're going to talk. You can see initiated public information programs, speaking with elected officials, large taxpayers, community service groups to discuss the proposed bond measure. So while you may have the support of the average community member, if you don't have the support of some of your large stakeholders, that's not going to mix and match very well. And if you can't get both of them to agree to what you guys are proposing on doing, then my recommendation would be, well, then don't move forward. My job's really easy because what I typically try to do for my clients is I say, survey says yes, stakeholders say yes. All they're doing now is they're directing you what they're willing to do and what they're willing to support. So it takes all the pressure off of you, and it takes all the pressure off of Wendy and Becky. It's no longer the Wendy bond program of 2020, which I know you really want it to be.
Oh, yeah.
No.
That's exactly what I want.
That's exactly. No, but it turns into the communities program because you're literally just listening to whatever the community tells you. If they don't want to do a $60 tax rate, then don't force it. If they want to do a 45 or 30, then make it 30. If they don't want to do a specific project, then take that project off the list. Don't force feed them something that they have told you, through this process that they don't want to support. Okay? So assuming everything looks positive, you then kind of fine tune. You can see finalized capital and financing plan. That is where, if your community says yes to $60 and your facility needs list is right around this mid-30 number, then we'd say, well, this is what it's going to look like. It's going to look like what we showed here because this is perfect. If the community says, I don't want to do 60, I want to do 45, well, I'm going to say, well, this only generates 25 million right here. So maybe what you school board would need to do if you want to fulfill your master plan is maybe you do need to add another Series D on the back end 3 or 4 years later. Make this as a long-term program so your community's going to say, hey, we're trying to address our entire master plan right now. The last thing you probably want to do is just, your plan says 28 million and you're going to ask for 26. Like, ugh. You don't want to be the district that keeps going back to the well all the time. Okay? Mm-hmm. And so that's what that bullet point means where it says, we're going to finalize the plan. And then, oops, I went to the refunding timeline. Next steps. And so then, if everything still looks positive, the only time that something would be official is at your November board meeting, so where you'd be a resolution in front of you with a bunch of the project lists on, on what you want to accomplish with bond money. And at that point, that's when you're making it official. That's when you'd be voting on something saying, now we are doing a bond. Because up until now to November, all you're doing is exploring and seeing what your options are to the community. Okay? Then November, if it goes, if you guys want to do this, campaign December to March, you win, and it takes about 2 to 3 months to get your first chunk of money. And, let's just call it $10 million that you can start spending like sailors. Questions? I try to make it quick, but there's a lot of info.
This is a pretty quick timeline, though.
Okay. In my world, it's a quick timeline if you have problems. Mm. If your community in the survey says, yeah, and your key stakeholders say yes, it's a drawn out timeline.
Gotcha.
Okay. If something comes back, let's say your survey comes back and it's like 56%, you got to get 55%, right? So if it comes back as like 56%, and some of your key stakeholders are like, ugh, I don't know about this right now. Yeah, you're not going to go in March, right? If your survey comes back and it's 68%, and your key stakeholders are like, yes, sign me up, I want to do this more than anything, you never know what they're going to say. That is, hey, you know what, you can figure all this out in literally 2 months. The thing that takes the most amount of time is getting your project list needs assessment. Sometimes, like in the case of Mendocino Unified, it's not going to be done for like another 4 months. So we're kind of like waiting a little bit. Ukiah got theirs done 2 years ago, did their survey, now they're just kind of in the stages kind of talking to some people to get their 2 cents. So I've had districts that's taken 6 years, for them to get ready. And I had one of my favorite clients in Kentfield call, so resolutions are due 88 days before Election Day. And I got a call from Kentfield so it's due on that Friday, and I got a call from him on Tuesday. It's like, can we do a bond this? I'm like, you have 4 days. And they did it. I don't recommend it, but they did it. And it was very successful. It's at over 70%. Don't recommend that at all.
So with the survey, I mean, we're in August, so we could get that done.
Yeah, survey typically takes, I'll say from a district saying, let's do it, to final data, 2 to 3 weeks. It's pretty quick. And I always say that let the survey guide you, because the survey is going to tell you what people want to do and what they don't want to do. And it's going to say proceed or not proceed, or proceed with caution, or proceed with this tax rate or not this one, and then it helps you make decisions.
So how many folks are you engaging in this survey, and how do you reach them?
The ultimate goal is 400. That's what you'd say is the scientific study is for, even though even when we do a survey of 100,000 people, you still only do 400. But that 400 matches the demographics of the type of person that's going to show up for that specific election date. So when we do a survey, we're going to have 400 people. That's the goal. You never know, because it's getting so much more difficult to get a hold of people. But the one good thing, I don't want TV to pick me up. The one good thing is that the type of person that we're going to be communicating with, they still really like taking surveys. And they have landlines.
They have landlines.
Is that the 65? That's the 65 blue area?
Yes. And so that type of voter, to be honest, that's going to be your most conservative voter, and I think it's fantastic that you're going to be able to find out from your most conservative voter how they feel about this issue.
Right.
We're not going to be able to get of anyone 18 to 24.
Unless you're doing text surveys.
Unless we're Instagramming surveys or Snapchatting surveys to them. That's a good tech joke right there. So what we typically do is, as opposed to 18 to 24, we'd probably survey 45% 65 and older. I'd rather have a more conservative survey group than a non-conservative. Then you'd probably 15 to 20% of those surveyed are going to be Republicans. Half the voters will be Democrats, and then the rest will be independents, decline to state, libertarian, whoever just fills that role of a high propensity voter. So we're not going to be surveying zeros. Zeros are what we call someone who's never voted before, because they're not going to be voting on this issue. And so if they're not going to be voting on this issue, I don't think any of us really care that much what their opinion is, because they're not going to show up. So what we want to do is survey the vast majority of the people who vote all the time, or in a March election, someone who most likely is going to be voting in a March turnout. So then you're going to have a really good gauge of how your community feels.
I know I've been bombarded at events and that age group, and they are frustrated when we were struggling about a year ago with expenses that they still have that line item on their tax bill. So they don't even understand how the money is so separate. And so I think that might be maybe an uphill conversation if they'll listen to you on the phone, giving it is a political time that people just hang up on calls if that's how you do it.
A lot of the times when it comes to voter surveys, especially on the phone, if we were saying, hey, we're calling on behalf of Kamala Harris, no one's going to want to take that survey, and some people will be getting it. But if they say, hey, I'm calling on behalf of the Fort Bragg Unified School District, you're going to have a lot of people that are going to be interested in taking a local survey. People are still interested in taking those. So I think, if we could get in between, 330 and 400, as long as the margin of error is right around 5%. That's the ultimate goal, the margin of error of 5% or, plus or minus.
So there's a couple really important timing issues. I see March is when property tax bills come out. So is our election going to be before that or after that? You can't answer that, but that's something I would think
it's the same for November. So when there's a November election, property tax bills come out in October. And so no matter what election you choose, you're always going to have people that are going to be complaining about tax bills. Right. What? Look at this line item. How dare you ask us? You're going to have those people no matter what election date you choose, unless it's June. But then in June you run into, well, who's coming to vote in a June election? So this March is actually going to be, in my opinion, probably a very high voter turnout. No one's going to be really coming out on the conservative side of the Republicans because no one's probably going to be challenging, the president right now. But I mean, right now the presidential nomination is just a circus right now. It's so fun to watch.
Right.
And so I think there's going to be so many people coming out to vote specifically in your district. And there's going to be a lot of them, in my opinion. So I think it's going to be a positive thing, especially with Kamala Harris still being on the ballot. One of the first time like a true Californian has a chance to win something.
And do you also survey other agencies that may have things on the ballot? I know our hospital just decided not to, I think, but there's the city, I mean, there's other, because we don't want to have too many things.
It's interesting. I've had, for a school district client of mine in 2016, SoCal, down in like SoCal Capitola in Santa Cruz, when they were doing their measure, the high school district was doing a measure and the college was doing a measure all at the same time. I remember West Sonoma County High School District, they were doing their bond, and at the same time they had 3 feeder districts doing a parcel tax, 2 school bonds, and there was a fire tax going on at the same time. What we have found is that when it comes to school bond measures, they kind of are their own little individual, baby for whatever reason. So depending on what the tax measure is, if the college was doing something, or if, the hospital was doing something, what we could do if you guys were aware of something, we can actually ask that question in the survey. And we can say, hey, as you may have heard, XYZ agency was also considering doing some type of tax measure. If both these measures were on the ballot at the same time, which one would you vote for? Would you vote for only this one, neither, or both? So we ask those questions quite frequently. So yeah, you can figure that out pretty quickly.
Okay. And then I guess another question would be, if it passes in March, I mean, with workload, are we going to be ready to spend money in, 2 years later or something?
So if it passes in March, what's really unique about school bonds is that you only spend money and you're taxed on the money, or taxed on the bond when you sell it. And so you don't, let's say you pass your bond in March and you're saying, we are not ready to do anything until summer of 2022. You don't have to sell bonds until 2022, which means that your community is not even going to be paying on those bonds until 2022.
Okay. So
And realistically, I would think close to a year out before we get through DSA and.
Yeah, so for a lot of school districts, I mean, there's so many factors when it comes to actually when you pass it and then you sell it. Some of it is, hey, if you were in really low interest rates, like we are right now, I'd say sell it. Even if you're not going to spend it for 2 years, lock this in right now. And then there's the variable of, well, if we know that you can't spend it in 3 years, well, even though you really want to, you legally can't. So then you're going to have to delay it anyways. So there's varying factors, and then ultimately you guys make that decision on when you want to.
And how specific do we have to be in how we're going to spend the money?
It's pretty broad, to be honest. There's a lot of school districts where it used to be super general, and then people were complaining about it. Some Howard Jarvis and Caltax. And so then they started getting really specific with the language. And then there was a school district down in San Diego that got sued because they were so specific at this site, and they weren't as specific at this one. Then this one didn't have, this site here said lighting at the football stadium. This one here didn't say lighting, it just only said lighting. And they spent money at this one on the football stadium lighting, and they got sued for being too specific. So the recommendation of most bond attorneys right now is be specific but general in nature.
And keep them up to date
Keep
the progress goes.
Keep your community up to date. But give yourself some legal leeway so you don't get sued because you're actually trying to be extremely transparent. It's unfortunate that happened. It cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars.
So is that a part of your survey to find out how specific the community would want us to be?
So in the survey, we don't say, are you going to be specific? Do you want us to be specific or not?
Right.
But we'll ask specific facility questions. Anywhere from 10 to 14, and we'll see the responses that we get from that language, which will determine how specific your community wants us to be.
Great.
The vast majority of school districts in California voters, maybe you're going to have 10% of the people say, I want this to be so specific, but your average person really doesn't care. They're going to say, just tell me that we're modernizing and renovating classrooms, restrooms, and school facilities. That will cover you in a lot of ways, and as I said, Vast majority of people would prefer to hear that than say, in class, you know, in wing AB at said school, no one cares about that.
Well, our fields have been in a lot of discussions for a long time, so I'm just curious.
So, yeah,
how
so,
that'll
I mean,
pop up.
right now, from my experience, rather than say the field at XYZ middle school, the field, you know, it'd just be upgrade and improve PE fields and facilities at district sites. Something like that.
So Wendy, the survey is 6,500, is that still out of the capital fund that we'd be paying for the
No.
survey? No.
That
Gets rolled in, or how are we paying for that? If we want to do the survey?
if we want to do the survey,
doing the
how are we
survey.
going to pay for that?
Mhm.
We do have that.
So I'm wondering if it's coming out of the, it's not coming out of the general
fund.
fund, it's coming out of the capital, the line item that we paid for the assessment, the needs assessment account?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is for building maintenance, not fields, correct? Or is it both?
It depends on what the community has an appetite for.
Oh,
Like
okay.
the other ones that we did,
Because if you combine.
there were
the-
things that were very specifically not included on purpose because the community did not want us to spend the bond money on that.
So the building maintenance and the fields is far more than $38,000 combined.
38 million.
38 million.
So
Yeah.
remember that when the fields were evaluated, they were evaluated by another group. So you have to ask yourself, what fields evaluation are you going to consider? If you're going to consider the one that was done by the city, that was a $14 million initiative, or initiative's the wrong word, but it was a $14 million
Project.
proposal. I would have to tell you, I don't think our community is going to stomach $14 million for the fields when you have Redwood Elementary that has no point of entry. They have the smallest office with the most foot traffic. We have so many issues at Redwood.
Yeah,
I
and I
mean,
guess
so many issues.
that's why I brought it up, is because I mean, we'll see what the survey says, but I'd love to keep the fields just separate.
Well, I think, you know, I would love to keep the field separate as well. Let's see what we get.
Right.
What really the board needs to do is to have the conversation of, do you want to proceed with a survey and see where we are with this? I appreciate the timeline that Greg's given us because I think it's incredibly digestible. This is not overwhelming to me. And like he said, red light, green light, yellow light, once the survey is conducted, we know how to proceed. I will say out loud that at some point, we need to have a very earnest conversation about Redwood Elementary. That little school continues to worry me. We have tricky weather, and our youngest kiddos in ages 3 to 7 have no indoor hallways. They have no double pane windows. The foot traffic at that school is monumentally profound, yet it has the smallest front office. There is no point of entry. It still baffles me. I don't know how people are supposed to get to Redwood. There's no bus drop off. We have a parking lot that we have to keep people out of because it's
Not safe.
And we have one-to-one technology and not enough outlets.
Literally, we
Really?
are one-to-one at
Seriously?
Redwood. Come the first day of school. Well, hold on. We will be one-to-one at Redwood within the first couple of weeks of school, and we literally do not have enough outlets. And what we're worried about is when we plug in the Chromebook cart, what's going to blow? So, I mean, it's just, Redwood is
It's the one school that didn't get included with the other ones from between 2003 and 2014. And the last time anything significant was done there was decades and decades ago. So it got kind of ignored in the last round, but it's desperately in need of a lot.
Right. Well, I think that the positive on our side is that it's presidential election and the interest rate is so low. So that really makes sense on a financial end of it. And I think the surveys will warrant, what the community would like.
And to be quite honest with you, we're looking at many things for Redwood. There's there are grants for early childhood education that requires a match, and the one that we're looking at with MCOE It's a 33% match from MCOE, 33% match from us, and then 33% grant funds. It's how we did the culinary arts building. It's a great way to go because it's not a 50-50 match, it's a third. And if we had something like this, we could jump on that. And quite frankly, those of you who have a visual of Redwood, that whole portable row needs to be just decimated, including the preschool. That needs to be brick and mortar all the way down. We don't have enough space at Redwood, and one of the things that's going to come up against us here pretty quickly is there is a huge movement in the legislature for preschool for all. If we go to preschool for all at Redwood, we literally have no place to put kids. And that's something we need to think about. Preschool for all means that you need to have more bathroom facilities because kids need to potty. They don't have the ability at 3 and 4 years old to hold pottying, to go down the hall outside when the wind and the rain is blowing, and nor will we have the staffing to take the kids to potty in the wind and the rain in the middle of February when we have that great weather. So we've got some issues to really look at because the preschool for all will happen. It's just a matter of time. And so, and if we decide as a community to be proactive and really take a look at Redwood, there's a lot at Redwood that needs to happen. And then we also have the high school gym that we haven't touched. That high school gym is probably the most used facility in our community. It is used by enormous amounts of group. I'm worried about the gym. It did not get a facelift in this last remodel. We had to remove it because we ran out of money. And then we have Alt Ed. Alt Ed's ready to fall down. So, and we will have to do something with Alt Ed, whether anybody wants to agree with it or not. Our neediest kids have the worst facility. It's not okay. We're either going to have to buy new portables to replace them. We're going to have to do something. They're all, they've hit their age. So
I don't think any of us,
I
don't think
know
that's
you all agree.
Yeah.
I do.
I think that's the discussion tonight, but.
What I feel most impacted with is the timeline. Because if the survey says no, then we're done and we'll look at it another 2 years. But this to me doesn't feel
I like this
insurmountable.
timeline.
It doesn't feel insurmountable.
I like this timeline for many reasons.
Seems like everything's pointing toward, we should do this.
Towards
This is the
exploration.
right time.
Yeah, I'm fully in favor of this. I think in the exploration, so we don't have to keep going back to the community, I would want to, at least my opinion, is to be as bullish as we can in what we ask, because I don't want to ask for, I mean, we have the assessment needs, but construction costs, keep going up, and I would want to make sure that we would have what we need to properly upgrade.
Well, and if the community says, yeah, we're all in for the 60, then it comes back to prioritizing what's in that needs assessment, and looking at it, and this will tell us what's in there that the community's willing to support, and then we have to prioritize it based on immediate needs and mandatory, necessary, desirable, because costs are going to go up.
And I think one key, in my opinion, the key, it's all about the tax rate. Because if the tax rate is going to be able to tell us where your bond amount is going to be. If they say $60, yes to $60, I mean, who knows, right? But, you can add this on, even if in the survey we tested 34 million, but maybe let's be bullish. You said, let's go to 38, or 32. When you're above $30 million, it's right. No one's going to say, "Hey, I would have voted for you for 34, but 36 million, forget about it." It's just a really big number at that point. And so, but the goal, in my opinion, of the survey, the most important thing is to just figure out, community feelings towards you guys, and also which tax rate do they feel comfortable with. Because if they feel comfortable with 60, then you have flexibility in adding a little, taking away a little, whatever the needs list really comes out towards.
And this is a kind of a silly question, but the survey, will you just be giving us a red? You're just bringing a piece of paper in saying green or red, or is it going to be 145?
I'm going to tug my right ear. No,
it's going to be 145 pages of.
It'll be less pages than this.
Okay.
I think it's 13 pages because that's the one I just did, and I'll walk you through it. And, I mean, it'll be pretty straightforward. You'll know, because either I'll have a big smile on my face or I'll be running, for my car after. So, no, it's my experience in working in school districts. I'll be able to tell you, hey, great news. Your community is really supportive. They really like this. They like this. They're not as fond with this, because one of the most important questions of the survey, we asked at the very beginning, would you be willing to support this bond if it was going to go towards this? Let me read you some proposed language. Would you vote yes? Would you vote no? Then we asked projects. Then we asked taxes. And then we asked the question again. From the first, we said, now that you've heard all this information, would you vote yes or would you vote no? That you've heard, now that you've heard this information about costs and projects, would you vote yes or would you vote no? And the most probably important thing is to figure out, does support go up, does it go down, or does it stay the same? And each of one of those three will tell me the sentiment of your community. Typically if it goes up, that tells you that your community says, I may not like taxes that much, but I really like projects. I really want this stuff to get done. Count me in. So you have your yes group, and it'll actually expand to more yeses. If you stay the same, that just says your community is kind of, I don't really care that much. Sure, why not? If you go down, that says that, hey, your community is sensitive when it comes to tax rate. And so then it depends on how much did it go down, and then we have to take a look at, well, how did they respond to the tax rate question specifically? Was it enough to where you have to lower the tax rate to go down to 45 in order to be successful? Then once again, after this, you then have to talk to the stakeholders and get their buy-in with the specific tax rate as well. So there's a lot of moving parts. As I said, if everything moves smoothly, it can get done pretty quickly. It's when something goes bad, I mean, all that means is you're not going in March, and your timeline, you have a lot of time. So.
And is the 45 to 60, you keep using those numbers, is that kind of the sweet spot in your experience? I mean, it's not, do you go down to 20, do you go up to 100? I mean, what's your? So
the maximum you can do is 60.
Okay.
That's the reason we say max 60, because, Prop 39, 2000, maximum tax rate is $60 per 100,000 of assessed valuation. Yeah. Most unified school districts, aren't gonna, it's not worth their time, for unified to do a $20 tax rate if it's gonna generate $10 million, unless you've accomplished everything that you wanted to, and you just need to have this little teeny tax rate to finish the job. Normally the sweet spot, I'm predicting that you're either gonna be at 60-year voters say, sign me up, or it's gonna be like a $49 number. That's what we have seen, for whatever reason, for unified school districts that have had multiple bonds on the books. It's either 60, or they'll end up in between 45 and 49.
Yeah, I could see that $50 number being
It's a weird.
Yeah, it's a mental thing.
Yeah. That's it.
So our cost for doing this is just the survey at this point?
The only upfront cost in working with us is the cost of the survey, and I have not to exceed, I believe, $6,500. It'll probably come in maybe around like $5,700 or something if I had to bet. A lot of it depends on how many questions we ask, and if you get to the full 400, so the more questions you ask, the more time it takes, the more you have to pay these people to do it. So if we can keep the project question to less than 12 or lower, and don't add on any random fluffy questions, it'll be less than $6,500.
Do you see value though
in adding a lot more?
Not a lot, but I mean, I would hate to authorize 6,500 and find that, well, if we could add a couple more questions, we'd get a lot more information. And
great question. 6,500 is normally our sweet spot for a survey. If I thought that you needed to do more, like in the case of a school district to where they have a lot of political baggage, we're having them do a survey of 600, because we're having to chop the survey in half, 300 for this community and 300 for this community. Because I know ahead of time that it's going to be required. I don't think that you need to ask that many more questions to get the answer that you're really looking for.
But we can authorize a little more to give a little bit of flexibility should it be necessary.
I don't think you need to be honest. I really don't.
All right.
If it comes to $6,800, I'll get the $300. I think it'll be 65 or less to get what you're really looking for.
And one more time, that is not out of general fund Monday.
No,
Just want to make
it
sure
is not.
that the community understands we are not.
It is out of money
Cutting.
with which we cannot use for any
Anything
general
else.
education purpose.
It's away from the classroom.
Yes.
So If I can, make a motion to authorize up to $6,500 to explore a school improvement measure.
A second.
Okay, any discussion? Any questions from the public? Okay.
You know where to find me.
Yes.
President Babcock,
Yes.
Trustee Mattson,
Yes.
Trustee Matula, yes, and Trustee Schneider.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't know if you're traveling tonight, but thank you for
Always traveling.
coming to our community.
Safe travels, great, thank you.
Okay, so we are in between action and information and discussion. So do we want to take a bathroom break and a stretch break? And
Okay.
maybe Mrs. Walker could discuss with Mr. Kale whether he might want to drive over the hill at this point. Okay, so let's take 8 minutes. 8 to 10. Okay, 8:55, or 8:50, yeah, 8:55, please. I need to use the restroom.
I do too. Okay.
Yeah.
back.
You have 22 seconds left. Very good.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to the information discussion. So the first section, we're good? We're back on. Sorry, I should have checked with you. All right, so for the academic calendar, Mrs. Walker?
So it's that time of year where we look at the calendars for the following school year. And so I've given you 3 proposals. You can see them in your packet. There's very few, there's not much variation between the 3, to be quite honest with you. And we will go through the same steps that we do every year, which means I'll send it out to the staff. We'll do a Google form to see what people want. We'll put it out to the parents to give them the opportunity to provide input. And then at the September meeting, I will have the results of those Google forms. So let's go to the first draft. The first draft has 3 days of the October break and 1 extra day in April. And let me just begin by saying that you did a discussion last year about the end of the school year for the 2021 year. Because the end of the last day of school dictates everything in the master calendar. So you had the discussion, I don't know if anybody remembers, I don't think it was a vote, I think it was just a discussion. But the discussion was that we were going to end school on June 10th. So when you end the school year on June 11th. June 11th versus June 4th. We didn't think we were ready to have the Friday off after Memorial Day, that last week be a 4-day week. And then it pushed us way back into August. So all of these iterations end the school year on June 11th and kind of recorrects. And then we'll start up again, and then once we get close to this again, and then we'll march, and then we'll skip back. So this ends the school year on June 11th, and then we do all of the contract issues, because people will say, we want spring break with Easter. Well, if we say June 11th is the last day, then we march back 8 Mondays from June 11th, and that's where spring break needs to be. So that's how all of this happens, and it's not a choice for us because it's contract language. So just so that you're aware. So the first option has a 3-day October break and 1 extra day in April. One of the things that we are going to have to talk about very seriously is the state is very close to requiring us to have built-in snow days. And for us, it's not snow. For us, what is it? It's power outage days. They are so what I'm told at our last meeting is that if we don't have built-in snow days, built-in power outage days, and we have to take a day, then we will not be reimbursed for that day. Us losing a full day of ADA is not good. So the good news is that we could have a snow day built in after spring break, that Monday after spring break. We have to talk to our bargaining units because I don't know exactly how it works. It's still the same number of days that they work, but if they came in and then we were dismissed and then we had to replace that day, then it would be extra. It would be extra money. Make sense?
For staff.
Yes. So I don't have all the nuances of this yet. I'm bringing this up because we have time to talk to our bargaining units about this. So all of these iterations have an extra day in April. Because if we have to do a snow day, the extra day in April is really where you want a snow day. Because it's, you don't want it to be like you get out of school on July 11th and the snow day is July 15th. The Monday after everybody's out. So
Well, and power outages are all happening in January,
right.
February.
If we have a power outage, we know before spring break. We've never had a day off after spring break because of power. So with that said, all of these 3 options have the extra day on the Monday after spring break. That will give us some flexibility. The option 2 draft has 2 days in October, but it has an extra day in January, and then the day in April.
So that's extra day is the right after Christmas break.
Exactly. So not before. And that was so that the first semester is truly preserved with as many, it gives it as many days as possible. And because of where the holiday is, the January 1st holiday, New Year's Day, it made more sense to put the day at that end. Okay? And then the third draft has the 2 days of the October break and then one extra day in December so that it's before the holiday, and then the same day in April. So not huge differences here. This will really be about where you want your time. I did ask our administrators which proposal they would endorse to the school board, which is, when I say it out loud, it'll be the kiss of death because everybody will want a different proposal. But they were advocating for proposal number 2. And the reason they were advocating for proposal number 2 is because it gives an extra day for that first semester for high school and middle school. And then it gives the holiday right at, it's close to New Year's Day. So New Year's Day is that Friday, and it just gives you that one extra day there. They felt that there was plenty of time between the last day of school and the Christmas holiday.
So, I'm sure it's too late, I don't know, being new to all this, but thinking about the snow day thing, I mean, we have so many power outages, plus we've had other issues. What about having, instead of attached to when you already have 2 weeks off, something in March or something, just a 3-day weekend in March that we could take that day, because it's a little later into the year.
Well, that's why I put the day with with spring break.
Right.
Because if we.
Oh, I know, I was thinking 2 on that end.
We haven't asked for 2 waivers. Since I've been here, we've only asked for a waiver for 1 day. We've never really had 2 days. Have we?
Yeah, we have,
Okay.
but luckily it hasn't, since I've been here anyway, it hasn't been 2 years in a row. So it's good, because every time you request one, you have to send them, you have to tell them how many times in the last 5 years have we asked for a waiver for the same reason. And
Okay, so the reason makes a difference, and I'm thinking of when the water pipe blew that time, we had to leave with the high school.
that would be completely
That was
different.
the
bond.
That
We'd
only
still get a
impacted one
waiver.
school, and, so that's different.
Oh, okay, good.
This is if the district shuts down.
And is a power outage, does it have to be the whole day? Like, I know there was a time this year that you sent everyone home at like 10 o'clock.
So that power outage, we always do our best to get as much information as possible. And that one that happened, it was 9 a.m., power went out district-wide. Count the whole coast. Everybody in Fort Bragg proper was out.
Right.
Mendocino had power, but we didn't. The difficulty with that situation is we have to make a call at some point. When we go an hour without power, we're talking potty issues. Because our bathrooms, you can get 1 or 2 flushes maybe. But after that, we'll just leave it at that.
Sure.
Is it a pressurized system? Or what's not working?
Well,
We
some
have
of them
well
are
water?
actually electric.
They're all.
So at
this
the
is-
high
this is all
school,
electric.
you can't use them. At the elementary school, you
can use them,
can,
but
but
you
they're,
can't flush them.
because we're on city water, but it's dark.
So my question is, I guess, the ADA part of it. Like, does the state, if we're open for part of a day, and then
You have
the power,
to be in for 300 minutes?
300, okay.
Isn't it 4 hours?
No,
It's-
it's a certain number of minutes that you get credit for the day.
Isn't it 240? I think it's 4 hours.
I don't remember.
Okay, so just,
I think it might be 4 hours because that's our
Is it
minimum
4 hours?
day.
I couldn't
That's our
remember,
minimum
but I
day.
just thinking about how many snow days and all that. So,
Well,
okay.
if they see apparently, and nobody will say absolutely, if you don't do this, we're not going to give you a waiver, or if you only have this much. What they are telling county offices is that districts should at least show that they're making an effort to be able to make it up.
So showing that we have a day or 2 there.
Yeah. And this is also now because of the potential power shutdowns during red flag warning times. there's more and more people are saying it will happen. And we're more susceptible. I was originally thinking, if they shut it off over here, they'll route it from the south. But, I mean, there's a possibility if there's a red flag warning where the transmission lines come in from Oregon, they'll shut the whole north half of the state down. And if they do that, then we're down. And it's not just until that's over, because after that's over, they have to inspect every inch of line before they power it back up again to make sure that nothing's damaged. So you're looking at probably 3 days minimum when that happens. And so that's why they're saying, and everything, all of the ramifications of that, like this, they're saying, you're on your own. Too bad, so sad. So CDE is saying, you want to think about building in days, just in case.
And I didn't have Hanukkah, I was just looking it up. Hanukkah in 2019 is, I'm sorry, 2020. Wrong calendar, Becky. Is December 10th through December 18th.
Because is it this school year that we're starting? That's where we have the travel day for Easter? Or did that?
This school year, we have an extra day on spring break, but we can't really call it a travel day for Easter, and I need to look at the calendar really quickly.
Because I thought somebody was at.
Well, one year we had a floater day the day after Easter, and people liked it. But
Right,
I don't know.
I thought we.
There's an extra day in December this coming.
Mhm.
It's the Monday after, it's the 13th, April 13th is the day off.
But then
And the week we're off is the week before.
Yeah. Right. But I think.
Well, personally, I like these because April 15th is on a Thursday, so I actually get a couple days with my kids. Just kidding. These don't seem much different. I don't know how people are going to decide. I mean,
It comes down to what your preference is.
Yeah, we've
And
gotten away
what
from the
it's probably
big-
going to come down to for most people is the extra time for the October break. And to be quite honest with you, having that Monday of the October break really just disrupts 2 weeks.
Right.
As a teacher,
Mhm.
well, as a teacher, I didn't like the October break, and we have teachers who would die for the October break. So it just depends on what your preference is. I have been, everybody knows my opinion about the October break. I think it's a huge disruption to what we do.
Mhm.
Some people feel like, I had a good argument with a teacher who said, no, Becky, we really need that. We've gone full board for 8 weeks. The kids are exhausting. You know, we get it. So it just comes down to
Yeah,
what
it's
the preference is.
yeah, it's rough.
okay. Well, this gets approved by November 1st.
Yes.
Right?
So we take action on it at the October board meeting.
So you're sending out the surveys?
So we'll send out the surveys on Monday. Everyone will get it then, and we'll put it on our Facebook page and on our website. And yes,
Maybe no Monday,
like Tuesday or
Next week.
or the Monday after school starts.
Yeah, I would
mean,
say even that, just
Yeah.
because people's email and everybody's kind of
Transition.
flustered, yeah. Getting going.
I'll get it out to the staff earlier just because it's already prepared and ready to go. And the Google form is from last year. We just wipe it clean, give it a new look. So that's something that we could do. We'll get the parent side going afterwards.
Because when's the September meeting? Yeah, not till the 12th, so we've got time.
We have time. And usually, when you send out a survey, or at least for the staff, 90% of the survey results are captured within 2 days.
Gets, yeah, if you give it too many days, it'll be at the bottom of the
Mhm.
inbox.
Page 2. So that's the calendar options. I'll have more information for you in the September board meeting.
Okay, any questions? All right, 9.2, Mendocino County Recreation Parks and Districts, POP 68 application.
So this conversation came from the Fields Committee meeting that I attended last month. The Fields Committee has been working together to try and get some momentum to have our fields addressed.
they were hoping to apply for Prop 68 funds, and the more I talked to Nancy Klein, and the more I talked to the Fields Committee, the more it seems unlikely that we will be able to do something with our Fields Committee through Prop 68. Nancy was actually the one who suggested that we talk to MCRPD about partnering with them, because Prop 68 is a Parks and Rec District grant. So I had a meeting with Dan Kais, the director of MCRPD, to just ask the question, what do you think your board would think about this? Should we get some people together to just start exploring, is this something that we should consider? And Dan met with his board president. His board president is very open to meeting with our board president, or just having an informal meeting with 2 board members and 2 of their board members and Dan and I to just begin the discussion. You know, what does this look like? Is this something we want to bring back to our boards? Is this something we want to talk about publicly? Dan was very kind. He said, look, Becky, 90% of what we do is on school district property. We need to keep our programs going as well, and that means that we need the fields in better shape. They talked about the days when we used to have the soccer tournaments and trying to get things going. Well, we can't have soccer tournaments on our fields anymore, not the way the fields are. Dana Gray needs a major renovation. That will be the last field to get addressed, because it's sinking. I mean, talk about a river running through it. There's a river running underneath Dana Gray, and the field is sinking. So Dan was very supportive. His board president had message that he was very supportive, and that the next step would be for pick 2 of you, let's find a date on the calendar, let's sit down with 2 of them, and then let's have a real discussion about what this means and what we are willing to have a discussion about, and the depths of that discussion for our boards. We may want to consider at some point having a joint board meeting with MCRPD. But the reality is that if our fields are going to get fixed, that seems like a much better use of our efforts, because it's grant money, which means it's not attached to our property taxes, and we can address some of our field needs. It also means that we would need to have a very earnest discussion on triaging what those needs are. I would love to have the $14 million plan that was proposed by the city architects, or I think it was, I don't remember who the company was. Verde Design. That was quite a while ago now. If that same proposal came out, I don't think it would be 14 million. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 18 million. It was 4 or 5 years ago, because I was still a principal at the time. So I think this is a great cause for us to explore. I think this would be something great for both of our boards to enter into together, but to start having the discussion. And the funds are out there. The Prop 68 funds are out there. We see that the Stadium Committee is getting their application in for this August 1st. We obviously have missed that, but we're no sooner to doing something like that right now anyway. But if we start having the discussion, we may be able to pull something off for next August 1, or the August 1 after that. But at least we can show our community that we're really taking a look at the fields and finding alternative ways to address them. And I think a partnership with MCRPD is wise.
Makes total sense. I think MCRPD was involved in getting the grant the last time the fields, like when they did Dana Gray 100 years ago. It seems like they took the lead on getting the grant because it was a Parks and Rec grant. And I don't know what the machinations were as far as the combined. I can probably find out from somebody I know. But that was a similar kind of partnership, I think.
So is there anybody that has a real passion for that piece as far
I
as
wouldn't
the
say
five
real
of-
passion, but I'll do it.
Okay, so Jerry. Anyone else?
I'll do it, but didn't you say you wanted it to be a part of it?
It doesn't matter. It can just
I
be
don't
two.
mind
It could
doing
be
it.
2 of you. It can't be more than 2 of you right now for this first preliminary discussion. If
Well, what do you think as far as the conversation that's happened? Should it be myself, or does it matter?
I don't think it matters.
I don't think it matters, to be quite honest with you.
Okay.
I mean, it's always nice to have the board presidents there. The good news is you're a board of 5. You're a pretty tight group. And I don't see any rogue members, to be quite honest with you. So, and if you're only working from 2, no one really can go rogue. So, and this
Okay.
really is
Then
about
we'll-
gathering information.
Okay, well, then we'll have Jerry and Mary.
Oh, that's like a Dr. Seuss rhyme. That's awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
So now Ann and I will work with Dan to find a date on the calendar. Would you prefer mornings or afternoons?
I don't care. After 9's good for me because I have my staff's all there by 9.
Okay, so we'll look for something like at a 9:30 meeting. Okay. 9:30, somewhere in there.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky, for keeping, I think it's a testament to your relationships in the community that people feel to, brainstorm and work together. So thank you for that.
The Fields Committee has done a lot of work, and they're really trying their best to figure out a way to do the job correctly. And it's hard. They're a small, little, mighty group. But we need money in order to do the heavy lifting, so thank you.
I just don't think people would come to you with those ideas if they didn't trust.
Oh, thank you.
So, thank you for that. Okay, so board policy, exciting stuff at 9:15 at night.
This is the fun stuff, kids. This is why
So,
we are here.
can I ask you, well, I guess, Anna, 1 is timing on this, and 2, Becky, how late you think how long closed session might be if we...
Do we need to extend the meeting?
It's at 10, Jerry?
10 o'clock. Yeah, you have to
For the
vote.
regular meeting, right?
Yeah.
Closed.
Because we have closed, right?
Right.
So that's included in that, I would say.
Yeah. So what do you think, ladies, about whether...
Well, I have to tell you, just looking over the board policies, was there, I didn't see any of this as hugely controversial, to be quite honest with you.
And I actually took some pretty good notes to know that there was only a few that had,
There's some options.
yeah, some options, but most of it's a lot of just legal updates. But, I wanted to make sure the uniform complaint procedures was, the admin had been reviewed, and then the last 3 really need to have your input and maybe Barry's input on the water management options, but a lot of it was boilerplate law change.
Okay, well, if you guys think we can do it quickly, I just don't want to...
Well, it's just discussion on this time. You're not taking action. So
Right.
literally, I mean, I know it's 80 pages, but there were a couple of options that were pretty benign. It's not like that they were options that I thought, okay, if we pick this one, we're in trouble. I didn't see any of the options as anything that was going to put us in a place. There was one where I thought maybe we just didn't even need the option, and I think it was the Budget Advisory Committee. Because we don't have a Budget Advisory Committee.
But I think it said May.
And they were all Mays
It said
anyway, so
May.
you didn't have to
It
do
said
them.
May.
So I would say on some of these that,
It was interesting reading, I'll have to say, but I
It always
can
is.
always read a
well, and I was
dictionary.
excited for the blank pages. I mean, it's like, oh, blank page, look how quickly I read through that one.
And when all the codes are, then you're like, oh, yeah, that's a whole
Codes.
page of...
So I have to say,
reference.
I think the majority of it is, like Diana said, it's boilerplate. There's not much controversy here. I don't know how much
Okay.
discussion you want to have on this. I can ask Barry to look at the watershed
Management.
project ones, because I looked at that and I said the same thing. Oh, Barry Silla gets to look at that
Right,
one.
I mean, it was just, it had talking about drought tolerant habitats and some equipment repair.
But even if we approved it the way it was, it's not going to affect us.
No.
So even if you took all of these board policies as they were written right now and took all of the optional paragraphs and said, okay, we're going to approve it just like they are, there was nothing in here that was going to put us in a place where we were going to get stuck. So I feel fine with moving this to action next month, and I can ask Barry about it, but I don't know if Barry's going to have a strong opinion, to be quite honest with you. And if we get in a bind with the policy and we say, oh, we should have had this optional paragraph, then, put it in. The only one I was worried about was the Budget Advisory Committee, because we don't have one yet. I know we want one, but I don't want to handcuff us to having one. not because I don't want to have one. We won't get the people. I mean, it's just, it's another meeting.
Well, we tried it, and then everybody, the two people that were on the Budget Advisory Committee said, well, I'd rather have the whole board make this decision, so then it was kind of walked away from that again.
Well, and if we want all of you to discuss the budget together, it's not a committee.
That's right.
And if you're going to talk all together, it's got to be agendized. So in any case, I felt comfortable with all of this. I'm not sure how you'd like to proceed.
Well, do we want to run through the optional spots tonight, or do you want to run through them when it's on an action item? We
Sure.
usually go through it during information and discussion.
How much closed session stuff do we have?
20, 25 minutes.
So do you think we can do it in 10?
I can do it in 1.
Okay.
We won't get anywhere, but yeah.
Okay, so
there's
let's
like,
get to, Diana, do you have by any chance notes on what page the optional ones are? So we can
25
get-
of 80 is the first one.
25, thank you,
Numbers, but I
Jerry.
have the numbers.
25. Okay, there it is.
So that optional paragraph was already in there, in the policy.
We have, okay.
Yeah, so.
That was easy.
Okay.
Thank you,
Got the
Anna.
next one, 29 of 80.
Thank you.
I'd eat my Chromebook to catch up here.
And Jerry, I just want to know, good job.
Yeah,
Oh.
birdie.
Do we have more than one compliance officer?
I'm sorry?
So this option is really not for us because
Right,
we
'cause
only
we don't
have one
have a-
compliance officer.
That was my question. Do we have more than one?
No, just me.
Notice to include, okay.
Okay, so that one goes out.
And then the number,
We did already have it in there though, so.
So that just applies if we had more than one?
Yes.
right.
Okay. So then, are we okay with leaving it in?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, Jerry.
Next one, 47 of 80. Be the third one.
That's the budget advisory.
Catching up. 20 pages to go. 19, 18.
Yeah. Does that have established, so that's. If we
And
don't
it's
have one-
optional.
If we don't have one, then it doesn't apply.
But I think if we do have one, does then that lock you? That was your concern, Becky, then it locks us into something.
A balanced group is pretty much
Right.
what it is.
And it makes perfect sense. It's not a bad thing.
Right.
It just says may, it doesn't say
Yeah,
must. And
right.
it's just,
Yeah.
it's-
And I think maybe if we reorganize the budget advisory committee and not have it really where we're making the priority list or something, then only having 2 of us on there would be okay.
Mhm.
But we were trying to really get into looking at the list,
Reductions,
right?
reductions.
And I think we didn't want to miss out on that. But if we're doing more things long-term, an LCAP cycle, I think it would be okay. But we haven't done it, so I don't know how it'll go.
Well, since it's not saying we have to, I don't see a problem with leaving it.
Everybody agree?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, next.
59.
So before we go to 59, though, I just had a question. On page 51 is the fees and charges. I just thought that it was interesting language that you can't collect debt against students for debts owed to school unless it applies to vandalism or loss of property. But it was talking about limiting participation of club extracurricular activities, including like dances. So that was interesting. I don't know if we have that as an issue. And then it also had some verbiage on cap and gowns that you can't have. Do the students, I know middle school they're borrowed.
Mhm.
How does it get addressed at the high school?
We have a whole closet
So
of
that you can give them the
kids-
option to buy, but we have some to give. So I
Mhm.
just want to make sure that was
Most
happening.
kids buy them, though.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So like Mitchell, his gown is going back to the high school. We bought
Right.
it.
Right,
We're not using a purple gown again.
right. Okay, that was
And
just
You'll
so-
my.
never find somebody that tall again.
You may. And if you do,
Jacob
they will
Welter.
say- That's right.
Good,
Oh,
okay, I just want to clarify that. That was my,
And
'cause I
Alted
didn't
uses theirs every year. They just, the kids
rotate
borrow
them.
Right.
Okay, very good.
But with decorating caps now, it's not as quite as easy as it used to be.
Right, so
'Cause you
Mitchell's
have to
cap
buy
is,
it,
Mitchell's
yeah.
cap's not going anywhere.
You have to buy, I don't know how Johnston's does buying them separately, but.
So it was 59?
Mhm.
So this one is about what our current practice is.
Right, and that's the one about collecting debt you cannot collect debt from a former homeless or foster youth. Optional work in lieu of payment, but they can do work in lieu of the payment if there's some sort of debt.
So I think we had all of this already in a policy. The only spot that was a real strong option was option 1, option 2 on page, whatever it is, 59, where it's about the reward or not.
The reward for the guilty.
A reward for 2,500 and a reward in excess of 2,500 shall be authorized in advance by the board. So that is definitely an option you have to consider.
Have we ever?
We've
Had
never
ever
offered a
for-
reward for information to find a guilty party who has done some type of vandalism or something to the school. No. Not, okay. Since I've been employed in Fort Bragg Unified.
I feel like kids are always so willing to come forward and rat out others.
Is that a reward?
Well, now with social media, I think
It's
the word travels.
Well, and we have
before.
cameras everywhere, to be quite
Right.
honest with you. So,
Well, should we do option 2 just in case? I mean, because that says we can.
Will determine the amount of a reward offered.
Right, but if there isn't a reward, then we wouldn't be determining anything.
right, so option 2 provides the board will determine the amount of any reward offered, both
I'd
options
rather
being
have
revised.
option 1 and just let you figure it out. Up to $2,500.
Well, I just like the other one because there's no number in there at all.
Right.
Oh,
See, and-
without
and
board approval, I see.
See, and I'm telling you as a superintendent, there's no way in heck I want to make that decision. So I would like to defer it to the board.
So option 2?
What do you think about
Yeah.
Nothing. So
Well, can we leave them both out then, I guess? May set an amount, however.
Oh, is that an option? Because that'd be great.
Yeah, I don't like the reward.
The whole thing is optional, yeah.
Rewards.
Yeah.
Note, the following section is.
So let's leave it out.
Okay,
I
so
don't want the
yay.
reward.
Remove rewards.
Remove.
No reward.
Excellent.
Now watch something really, really bad happen.
That's okay, it won't.
Okay, and then, so the next one is on page 61. This is optional. The regulation.
Yeah, the next 2 are optional ARs.
So those are the ones you were saying that,
So page 61 is an optional administrative regulation which we already have in place, and there are no changes to what we have in place.
oh, okay.
Yeah, there was nothing.
And how about
controversial.
the energy and water one?
Is an administrative regulation we have in place, but there are a lot of changes. But the changes are to reflect new state guidance from CDE.
Okay.
But it can be revised to reflect district practice.
So we want this one to go to Barry,
Mhm.
even though we're not sure if he's going to have.
Mhm.
And then the last
A lot
one
of
is.
this ties into what we were talking about with the emergency preparedness.
Mhm.
So he definitely needs to look that over.
The board policies on ELs,
That's-
we do it.
Okay.
We already do it.
So what about there's a whole section in there about the language acquisition program.
So if you read that, it says that it may.
Right. If you get a certain amount of.
And I actually had to talk to the administrators about if parents or community members request what we have to do, so we already have that documentation going.
Great.
I would love to have a dual immersion program.
Right.
I think we all would love to have a dual immersion
Just to
program.
find the staffing.
It's the staffing.
been-
It's the staffing and how to make it equitable.
It's been-
So if I've got one person
for one grade, how is that a dual immersion program? Right? Because it needs to
Right.
continue through the grades. And then if you only have one class, it means that that group that starts it gets to be in it the entire time. Or anyway, I would love to have a dual immersion program. I don't know how we'd pull it off unless we can get the staffing or do some kind of campaign to get our current staff to become bilingual.
Right. So that was my only concern, was that the procedures there on if it is requested by a certain amount of people and everyone knows about that process and there's a timeline that
That's
we
a
can
relatively new
investigate.
process, but
Mhm.
we have an information data sheet now that we are maintaining and collecting, and then we're going to have to turn that into our federal program monitoring.
Okay, great.
So I'll show you. I'll share it with you.
And if you have, if a parent, even with the parents requests a particular type of program and you don't offer it, you're required to document that the request was made, the discussion was had, and what the outcome was.
Right, exactly.
Good day to ask that question.
I learned that at my meeting too, at Lake County when we did our EL session. And that takes us all the way to the end.
That's right.
Well, there's a 70. Here's an optional on, or two optionals on 70.
Oh, and there's an option on.
An optional paragraph on page 79, we already have a paragraph, and there's a minor.
What about 70?
We do not currently have that paragraph. Formative assessments being used like standardized student performance and appropriately adapted to apologies. And instructions.
Well, that one says may. The one on top, staff development shall address the socioeconomic needs of English learners. So that one's pretty forceful.
Which
On the top of,
Oh, yeah, further up.
Addressing the.
Using staff development.
Oh, 70. I'm on 71 still. Sorry. Thank you.
Top of 70.
I mean, that's partially closing the achievement gap, but it is a shall and not a may.
And that's for staff development to address that need.
Mhm.
So I
It
think
was a
that,
paragraph that was there that has
Mhm.
been heavily edited, but it was there.
Well, there has been lots of staff development
Mhm.
around English language development, but.
We don't ignore anything with our ELs. We do quite a bit.
so you feel like we cover it.
We have a coordinator at every site now. Our federal program monitoring is going to put us in a position where we have to document better. We are getting, I don't know if audit's the right word, but we are participating in federal program monitoring for our Title I or Title III.
So you're okay with leaving the shall? This one?
We have that paragraph in already, right? If we
Okay.
keep the paragraph, then it has to be.
Okay, so everything.
Yeah, that was all my questions.
Any other questions?
We've just got two more, one on 71 and one on 77.
I lost my page number and so now, oh, there it is. Okay. Items 1 and 2.
We don't have,
That whole section is brand new.
mhm.
So we talked about this in Lake County when we had people from CDE here to talk to us about this new regulation. I actually have a form in Google Docs for 11311 for our administrators to begin collecting that documentation for our program monitoring, because we are going to have to upload that form to the CDE website.
in January when we do this. So we've already begun this documentation, and this board policy, I'm looking at page 77. Is that what
Okay,
you're
sorry,
looking
no,
at?
I went back to 71.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So I'm on 77, so.
Okay, so 77 should stay.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so 71, there's two.
Let's quote it up there too, where you were at.
And then these are 1 and 2 are optional and may be revised to reflect district practice. 1 is about a dual immersion program, so I don't know whether we should leave that out. Since we don't.
Are you talking about 71?
Yeah.
Yes.
It may include.
I would just leave those out for now.
Okay. Got that, Anna? Okay. All right. We're good?
That's it.
Okay. We're 6 minutes over. Okay. So that means those will come back for those watching at home. Those will come back to, for action next month. Okay, so the Parent Advisory Committee, we had talked about this in June. We would like to start working on our new plan and figure out how we're gonna include more authentic stakeholder.
So Mary Macula just happened to be in the office one morning. I said, "Hey, Mary, what do you think of this?" And so what I did is I looked at the calendar for board meetings, and my thought was if we had a parent advisory committee, bagels with the board, or whatever you want to do on these 4 mornings, they should be coinciding with board meeting days. So then what happens is if there's something important on that board meeting agenda that someone wants to ask a question about.
So this is different from the one we already set up.
No, you asked me to come up with 4 meeting days. Did I miss something?
You did, but we were setting up, we were gonna be in the conference room every Thursday of board meetings.
Okay, so I blew it. I'm sorry.
So we could exchange these for LCAP
Or
specifically.
We could just tag them on to the end of it.
Yeah, because they were supposed to start at 7:45.
You know, we could just start these at 9, and then whichever board members are supposed to be at them.
I'm so sorry. I totally missed that.
Stay.
Sorry.
No,
'Cause it
we
could work.
debriefed a lot that day, and you were on to doing other things.
I'm
You were-
sorry.
It's okay.
But I think if you change it to 9 a.m., they would work. Maybe? Too much to do in a day?
Well, I think the 8:30 is so that you get the drop-off, right?
Mhm.
Oh.
Yeah, so I think we'd have to either cut, because we were gonna meet at the district office as a same spot, but, I mean, district office, Redwood, it's kind of the same parking lot. And then maybe by January, people would be so enthralled with coming to visit us that they would be we could get the information out that we're moving.
Well, I like the idea also of just keeping it at the district office in the same spot so people don't.
Where
try to
are we
run
this
around,
one
where
day?
are we
Yeah.
today? And then I will say for the DLAC meetings, our parents know where the DLAC meetings are. They're always in the same spot.
Right.
There's no question about it. So there is value in that continuity. So this is not an action item. This is a discussion item. But I like being available to the public, especially on a board meeting day, so that if there's some hot ticket item that people feel very passionate about, they can grab your ear before then, or at least 2 people. And 9 times out of 10, when there's a hot ticket item, when folks have a chance to discuss it with someone, it doesn't become so impassioned. So.
Well, and I think we might get a few more people that don't want to give up a whole evening and have to sit and wait for an item, but they can come, express their concern, and then leave. It's not if we could change the name so it's not parent, because I really think we want to try to, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but that we want anybody, whether it's, a community member, a 65 plus that has a landline phone person that just has some extra time, have some extra time, just,
So
if
let's
it's
just
just
call it
an
the
advisory, right.
So just LCAP advisory committee?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think we piggyback, we don't think we're gonna have a ton of people. So from 7:45 to 8:30, we're gonna, whatever people wanna talk to us about, and then we'll shift gears at 8:30 to kind of be more on the LCAP specifically.
idea.
Does that
Yeah.
seem okay?
Mhm.
And we'll just move the location to the district office for all of them?
Do-
I,
The
that's
conference
a great
room?
idea.
Yeah, try it, at
Okay.
least.
Let's give it a whirl and see what
Plenty
happens.
of parking at the CV Star right there.
Mhm. Okay, so these are, but January 9th, that's the oh yeah, because first. Okay. That
Well,
is the
it's
second
interesting,
Tuesday.
we look at the calendar and that January 9th, yes, because the first is a.
Maybe a Wednesday
Let
or
me go back and
something.
look, I'm talking out of turn, I think we're all just tired.
Tuesday, be a Tuesday. 7, 8, 9.
This year is a Thursday. It's a Thursday.
Okay.
Well, you said you wanted a board meeting, so.
Yeah.
Well, that's a board meeting day, and I'm thinking about the board packet for Anna and I. Well, more Anna than me.
Well, it's up the week before. The 9th is the board meeting, they pack it on the
Right.
3rd.
Mm-hmm.
This just hits holidays.
Well, yeah,
But we could change that one because the calendars, we could do that in December.
that's right. We have to set the meeting calendar.
So Anna, why don't you think about that, with your children being home and all that kind of stuff, if, I mean, because it's not set till
Oh,
December, if we want to
right.
move it to the following week,
The regular meeting?
the regular
January
January
9th.
meeting.
That would, I'd vote for that.
If you make it the 16th instead of.
Because I want to bring up the timing of this meeting for future notes too. I mean, this seemed to be kind of, and we've done it both ways. Last year it was after the first day of school, or the week of the first day of school. But this week it was before, and I don't know which is better for you. I feel like this was kind of scrambled agenda.
This is really tough.
Yeah.
was worse.
So,
It was really tough because we also, when we
Yeah.
planned this meeting, we didn't have registration on the books. And then we didn't have the administrators being gone for 3 days for the leadership blueprint. And then we didn't have our big guest speaker coming tomorrow. Like, I'm gonna be at Cotton Auditorium at, 7:15 tomorrow morning. We didn't have that planned. So we always try and do our best. Things happen. It's just a tough time.
August is tough, no matter how you look at it, but maybe during school session would be better.
just something to think about between now and December, as far as, well, they're scheduled so far in advance. I mean, if you, I would like to see if we could accommodate your workload. So, August and January. You can think about or January and August, they go that way. Okay, so we're gonna move these to or just the location, and possibly the January date, depending on what happens to the general meeting. And then my plan is to also decide how we're gonna sign up for these meetings, whether I'm gonna be, and I'm fine with that, because it was kind of my idea, but whether I'm gonna be at each one, or if we're just gonna rotate to
I think
all the
rotating.
time. So we'll,
Just having two.
you guys can think about that. And we'll get that calendar going too for September. So again, for the lots of people that are watching, the same day as the board meeting, we are going to be available at 7:45 to 8:45 in the conference room. Oh, look at that. 7:45 to 8:45. We're hoping that will cover staff and parents during drop-off to swing by the conference room and chat with us about anything you'd like. There'll be 2 of us there. Okay? And we'll have some coffee. All right. Okay, so we're moving on to advanced planning and future board meetings. My only note was about the August meeting, Anna, if you want to kind of brainstorm that with yourself. And also I wanted to thank Mary and Becky. I wanted to thank Mary for, and Diana for helping set up such a nice reception tonight. So thank you. I think that was a really nice,
Start of the
we
year.
had a nice full room.
It was such a nice crowd, yeah.
It was great. So thank you for everybody that helped with that. Any other comments on advanced planning?
The tennis shoot Tuesday is August 20th, and it's not on our list. Whoa, I think, if that's right. Check my date.
What's that?
Tennis Shoe Tuesday from the Wellness Committee. They were trying to.
Tennis Shoe Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
Wear your best for your picture.
Running shoes?
I never came and got my button.
I bet it could.
We're trying to encourage folks to kind of walk and be active.
So they're gonna be running shoes, doesn't have to be tennis.
They can be
So that was the second Tuesday or something.
athletic shoes.
It's a generic term from way back.
Is that right? Hmm? 13th?
Just kidding.
I don't know why I had it on.
But still could be Tennis Shoe Tuesday.
Every Tuesday.
The 20th?
Okay, well,
Anyway,
Anna,
you'll-
could you
it's
just
sometime
check
in
on that and
August.
see what it was
Find out
before
what
and then,
day.
yeah. Tennis shoe. There we go. And then I
Priorities
would
here,
like
people.
to try to get Becky to not go to every Three Rivers meeting, so maybe we'll work on that between now and the 20th.
There's one coming up.
I think it's
Yeah. So I'd have to, if we can all look at our calendars and maybe
August 20th.
we'll strong arm Becky a little bit to take a few
Wear your
things off
tennis
her
shoes.
calendar.
Yes,
Where are your
strong
tennis shoes
needed.
there?
Where do they
Hmm?
meet?
They meet in their one of their
Becky
classrooms.
will be out of town for
Oh,
the
well, there we
next
go.
Three Rivers board meeting, so.
Oh, that's right. I'm taking Mitchell. Yes. I'm-
Okay.
Okay, but where am I?
Yeah, I know. I keep thinking, why am I canceling that meeting? Yeah, I keep saying you're not going to be here. Really?
Okay, so we'll figure out with our invites. I'll check my calendar. We don't need to hold up meetings for this. Okay, all right, everybody's got that list?
What is the sixth grade presentation?
That's like
I would assume
orientation.
before.
That's
Oh,
like
it's
orientation.
Oh,
Yes.
it's a presentation. They're ready to present already?
No, it's an orientation
For new
pres-
families.
parents.
Okay.
And the speaker tomorrow is at 9.
No, she starts at 8:30. We have a district staff meeting at 8. If any of you'd like to come, I'd be happy to introduce you to our troops. We're doing a half-hour staff meeting, and then the speaker will start at 8:30. She'll be done about 12:20, 12:15, and we're going to end with a small activity, and then FBDT has a meeting from 12:30 to 1. We'll be serving baked potatoes and salad from the middle school library, and then everyone's off to do their Keenan.
Yay.
Including me.
Pretty exciting stuff here in Fort Bragg Unified.
And that's a cotton at 8.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And then I only had just one comment, and I forgot, and I know this month was tough, but I know in the past, we've had the titles on the board policy updates, which is kind of helpful, so if folks are looking online, or if we need to reflect back to it, we can look at the caption really quickly and say, oh, I forgot, that's where it was, because it's hard to go through the.
Totally understand, you almost didn't even get the numbers.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, I totally, like, this one was tough, but it's like just, it's easy to recall, because I've gone back to a blank one, and it's like, oh, gosh, you
Have to page through.
it's page through. And then,
I was giving Anna board background sheets at 4:30, and
I
it's
believe
at
it.
5 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
And it was, this was Monday. It was a little crazy.
it was totally crazy. Yeah, I can't even imagine. And then, I don't remember what policy it was, I'll look, but we do have a board policy that says that our meetings are at the Dietrich Center. So we probably need to update that or decide if that's where we want to continue. I know we kind of liked it, and we did that just, but there is a policy that says our meeting is happening at the Dietrichs.
So I would just like to make the plug that we keep going here. The Diedrich Center is available
Too large.
again.
It's too large, though, for me. I mean,
Well, I
doesn't-
just think I think it's easier for our IT crew
this
instead of
equipment, you don't wanna
having
do that.
all of this at Diedrich Center or moving all of it to Diedrich
it'd be
Center.
crazy. So we need to update.
Are you talking permanent or temporary?
No, we're talking about, we have a board policy that says that our board meetings are held at the Diedrich Center. The Diedrich Center is available again. We could return to the Diedrich Center, but what I'm saying is that I like it better here.
The Dietrich Center, be able to have all this stuff up all the time?
No.
And no, just
Yeah, thank you.
favor?
I know I don't get a say, it's late, I'm sorry.
Okay, so if we could just find that when somebody has a minute. so we can-
I'll find it. It's-
Okay.
I think you just do location of meetings and it'll pop up. on
Okay.
She'll be able to find it quickly.
I'm just searching the policy and I don't see any policy that says we have to have a job entrance.
I'll find it and tell you.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, don't worry about it. I'll find it. I read it twice.
No, I-
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we are going to go into closed session. I think we should also, when we're doing this, approve that we're going to need to go over.
I agree.
Okay. So any public participation on closed session items? Okay, there being none, if we could have a motion to adjourn to closed session and that we're going to go past 10
Probably
o'clock.
set it 10:15 or something like that, some kind of a time.
Okay.
I move that we go into closed session, adjourn and go into closed session and allow ourselves to go to 10:15.
Okay,
Second?
all right. All those in favor?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.